God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everybody to a special hearing of the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township. I have the burden of being the presiding officer tonight because the chairwoman of the president of the Board of Commissioners, Elaine Paul Schaefer, has voluntarily recused herself from acting in any way regarding the Villanova zoning ordinance or the Villanova conditional use application or the Villanova subdivision and land development application that's would be coming in. So we are come to order now. We will have the hearing. I just set the framework a little bit. We had an ordinance enacted 2013-21. Final passage was on March 31st, 2014. And that established under our zoning code, section 280-68 of our code, a comprehensive integrated college development plan. And that, as part of that enactment, and included in that ordinance, are provisions that allow for an owner of property encompassed by the district to apply to the Board of Commissioners for approval of development of the lands of the property. And the requirement further is that the board hears that in a formal adjudicatory or quasi-adjudicatory proceeding, and that's what we have tonight. And we will be taking sworn testimony and documents, and we have, as a special arrangement, a William Bola, who's here at table in front of us, and he is an attorney, and his role is to represent the Township of Radnor in a position, I'm not sure if adversarial is the right term or what, but he is a counterpoint to the applicant, Villanova University. I should have mentioned that Villanova University is the reason we're here, because they have submitted an application for development of 13.81 acres on Lancaster Avenue near Ithan Avenue on the south side of the highway. And so we'll be hearing evidence, and Mr. Bola's job then is to serve as a counterpoint to the applicant. I will be assisted by our learned solicitor, John Rice, and I'm sure there will be lots of times when I'll need his help in sorting things out. So with that preface, I think that we're now, okay, then Mr. Rice will do a little more educating.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Just to set the stage for what we're going to do tonight, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. The commissioners are sitting, much like the zoning hearing board would sit, as judges, hearing testimony from the applicant, hearing testimony from anyone else that's a party. Township's a party. Tonight, Mr. Ball is here representing the township. Mr. Cornelia is here representing Villanova. This application was filed on May 29th, 2014. It was advertised on July 14th and July 21st for the hearing tonight. The process. Villanova has a burden of presenting testimony that they comply with the ordinance, the CICD ordinance, and the township has the right to put on additional testimony, and anybody else that becomes a party has the right to participate and put on testimony and evidence. And I'll explain what becoming a party means in a minute. The way we'll progress is a witness at a time. Mr. Cornelia will call his witnesses. They will be cross-examined by the township and any other party, and then he will proceed through all his witnesses. And when he's done, then anyone else that wants to present testimony will have the opportunity to do that. They will call witnesses. This is not standing up and making statements. This is sworn testimony. There's a record being made of this proceeding. And we're going to do that until everyone's done calling their witnesses. And at the end of that, at the end of all the witnesses and the sworn testimony, there'll be public comment. That won't happen tonight, although we have some public comment on the agenda. Public comment on the overall application won't occur until all the testimony is in the record and it's been complete. Let me describe what becoming a party means. There's two ways you can, if you're a resident sitting out there, can participate. One is to wait until the public comment and stand up and make your statements, pro, con, maybe, maybe not, however you want to do that at the end of all the sworn testimony. If you want to become a party, you need to tell the board tonight, name, your address, and you want to become a party. If you become a party tonight, you have the right to cross-examine all the witnesses. You will get copies of any correspondence that goes between the attorneys. You will have the right to file an appeal if you disagree with whatever the ultimate decision is. There are some standards to becoming a party. It's a little bit more than just being a resident of the township. I'm not going to get into what the standards are, but I guess the first order tonight is to ask, is there anyone here that has an interest in this application that would like to become a party? If so, please come up to the mic, state your name, state your address.
Good evening. Tish Long, 35 Aldwin Lane. Tish Long, 35 Aldwin Lane. I would like to become a party on behalf of Friends to Preserve Radnor, a group of over 200 residents representing a wide range of the township. And Mr. Bowl and I have spoken about this, and he was in agreement that I should apply for party status.
Okay. So I take it, Mr. Bowl, you don't have any objection to Ms. Long becoming a party?
objection to her participation.
Mr. Keneally?
I have no objection to Ms. Long participating. At this point, I do have objection to the association participating.
Okay. And
Okay.
what's your objection, Mr. Keneally?
They do not have standing. I have no objection to Tish Long, as I said. I believe she has standing. I have no objection to her
Okay.
participating.
Ms. Long, you're here in your individual capacity to become a party?
Well, I'm also here really representing Friends to Preserve Radnor, and I do have a question. I'd like this clarification on
Sure.
this, because Mr. Bowl and I have been exchanging emails, and I was under the impression that possibly a few members of this group might also be able to give witness testimony and all of the above. So is that not possible?
Well, let's direct your questions up
Okay.
here. The Friends to Preserve Radnor,
Right.
what, are they incorporated?
No, we are not incorporated. I
How
think you're
are-
all familiar with the group.
How are they formed, though?
It was a grassroots organization founded by me, and our goal was always to look out for the best interests of the township. And I'm sure you've all possibly gone to our website and seen all of the things that we've been about.
Okay, but just so it's clear on the record, is there any formal incorporation documents, bylaws, rules and regulations? Nothing
No.
like that, just a name?
Just the name.
And then people joined that organization?
People join that organization through a change.org petition.
Okay. And there's no fictitious name registration or anything like that for that organization?
No.
Okay. Are you going to be the spokesperson for that group?
I would like to be one of the spokespeople. I may not be able to attend all of the hearings, so I would like to call on a few other members to possibly participate. And I certainly can supply you with their names and addresses as well.
Okay. It's my recommendation for tonight that Ms. Long and the group be granted party status, but subject to sending a letter with the names of the individuals who will be representatives of this group.
Okay.
And you've got to have one person at each hearing
I understand that.
do the talking.
I do.
You know, if they're all in the group, and then in addition to the representatives, whether it's 2 or 3, the names of the other members of the group,
Okay.
okay? So just subject to that, send that between now and the next hearing.
Okay.
And for purposes of tonight, nobody else has any objection with Ms. Long?
Yeah, and Mr. Rice, just please note my objection to
It's-
Friends to Preserve Radnor being granted party status.
Okay, but not the Ms. Long?
Not Ms. Long.
Okay. All right, well, the objection's overruled, and, I mean, subject to you getting confirmation of who the representatives are and the full list of the group, and with the understanding that if there's 100 people in the group.
No, certainly, I would estimate no more than 2 other people, perhaps.
Okay. And anyone who's a member can certainly stand up at public comment at the end of all the
Exactly.
sworn testimony and state whatever they want to say.
Terrific. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else want to become a party?
Good evening. I'm Gayla McCluskey. I'm Voter Service Chair with the Radnor League of Women Voters, and we'd like to request becoming a party. GAYLA-MCCLUSKEY 6 HARFORD Lane.
Any objection, Mr. Bola?
I object. Just so, Gayla, are you asking to become a party, or is the league asking to become a party?
The league.
I object to the league becoming a party. They have no interest in this matter that's any different than any other citizen of Radnor Township. They have no unique injury or anything of that nature.
Okay. Ms. McCluskey, are you an officer?
I am.
Okay. And what was that again?
I'm Voter Service Chair, former president.
And the group is, how is it organized?
It's part of the National League of Women Voters. We're the local chapter here in Radnor Township. We have members throughout the various wards, including the ward where Villanova resides. We also have members, obviously, where Eastern and Cabrini are situated, which could take advantage of this new ordinance, and that's why we're so interested in the process.
Okay, but the ordinance is not in front of the board tonight. The specific application of Villanova is in front of the board, just so
I
we're clear
understand.
on that.
I understand, but the process for the other 2 universities, I understand, would be the same.
Right. So I would say the same thing in terms of the League of Women Voters. You're going to be the representative at these hearings?
I'm here tonight because our president was out of town.
Okay.
In fact, most of our board is out of town.
Okay. So subject to submitting a letter requesting party status and some information on how the league is organized.
May I ask some questions, Mr. Rice, first, please?
Yeah.
Before you make a decision. Ms. McCluskey, does the league own any real property in Radnor Township?
Not the league as an organization, no.
Okay, and what is your status with the league? What position do you hold?
I've been on the board for several years. I'm currently voter service chair. I'm a former president of the league.
Okay, and was a particular vote taking on whether the league should take action on this conditional use hearing? Was a vote of the board taken?
Yeah, yes, it was.
When was that vote taken?
The position statement that I was going to read was approved yesterday. I'm sorry, the position statement that I was going to read was approved yesterday.
And by whom was that approved?
By the board?
And how many members are on the board?
I would have to guess. I am saying around 12.
Okay, and did a majority of those members vote in favor of taking a position on this conditional use hearing?
Yes, of course they did. It would probably help to explain we're a consensus-driven organization, and we don't take positions without achieving a consensus.
Okay, and so was a formal vote taken?
It was by email, and it was individual votes submitted on the position statement, yes.
And is the league is it a nonprofit corporation, or what type of entity is it?
I'm not exactly sure what our tax status is. It's not a 501c3.
Is it a corporation?
I don't know.
Were there any minutes or resolutions attached authorizing the league to take a position on this conditional use hearing?
I don't understand your question.
Were there minutes, was there a resolution approved by the league authorizing you to appear here this evening and take a position on this conditional use hearing?
Not a resolution per se, no. The matter went this way, which might help explain, is it's very common for the league to speak to this board and many other boards in a formal way. We draft the position. It goes out to the members of the board, and it's voted on. And if it's voted in the affirmative, one of the members of the board comes and makes the statement, and that's what I'm doing tonight.
Again, please note my objection.
I think
to
the issue that
league.
Mr. Cornelia is questioning you about is how was the vote taken? There was no formal meeting. It was done through email. Is that correct?
And that's all right per our bylaws.
Okay.
That's acceptable.
So I would still, and let me just, so the board, the MPC permits parties to be made to these types of hearings, any person affected by the application, and it includes civic or community organizations. So civic and community organizations, just because they don't own property, are permitted to appear if the board's agreeable to that. But I think, subject to sending the bylaws and the when was the vote taken, and written authorization that you had the right to appear here on behalf of the league, I would still grant party status, at least for tonight. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
With the same stipulation that at each meeting, only one person from the league can make it?
Well, one representative, yes. I mean, it may not be Ms. McCluskey, there may be someone else who's available, and as long as it's just one person standing up and presenting the position or asking the questions, so, okay?
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Rick Leonardi from 30 Aldwin Lane. Leonardi.
Okay. Mr. Cornelia, any
No
objection?
objection.
Mr. Bola? No.
What's the address again, Rick?
30 Aldwin Lane.
No objection, thank you.
Thank
No
you.
objection, thank you.
Okay, you're in. Anyone else?
Good evening, Jonathan Heckscher, 38 Aldwin Lane. Let me spell Heckscher. Heckscher.
The number again, sir? 37?
38.
38?
Okay, Mr. Cornelia? Any
No objection.
Mr. Bola?
No objection.
Any of the other parties have any objection to this gentleman? Forgot to ask that. Okay. No objection. Mr. Heckscher, you're in. Anyone else?
Anna Marie Hessman, 8 Barley Cone Lane, Rosemont. No organization to worry about. Anna Marie Hessman, Hessman.
Hess?
S as in Sam, MAN.
Okay.
8 Barley Cone? Yes. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Cornelia, any objection?
No objection.
Mr. Bola?
No objection.
Any of the other parties have any objection? No? Next. Anyone else? Okay. Just a couple other housekeeping items, and then Mr. Cornelia can call his first witness. The application, as I stated at the outset, was filed on May 29th. And with the application were several exhibits. I'm going to just pre-mark these. I've pre-marked my copies. I think Mr. Cornelia has additional copies here. If any of the parties would like copies, either Mr. Cornelia or the township will find copies for you. So just in terms of the exhibits, I'm going to mark what came in with the application. A1A is the conditional use plans prepared by Nave Newell, dated May 2nd, 2014, consisting of 11 sheets. A1B is a conceptual landscape plan prepared by Nave Newell, dated May 2nd, 2014, consisting of 4 sheets. A1C is a development impact statement prepared by Nave Newell, dated May 2nd, 2014, It includes 36 pages, and there's 16 exhibits attached to it, which were prepared by Robert A.M. Stern Architects. A1D is a conceptual stormwater management narrative dated May 2nd, 2014, also, I believe, by Nave Newell. And A1E is a transportation impact study prepared by Villanova's traffic engineer. So they're in the record as part of the application and as applicant's exhibits, A1A through A1E. Mr. Conneal, you ready to call your first
Yes.
witness?
Mr. Tweedy? Yes.
Yes. Alex Tweedy, Tweeedie.
C1, the person. Alex, by whom are you employed?
Nave Newell, we're the civil engineers for the project.
And how long have you been employed by Nave Newell?
10 years.
And are you a registered Pennsylvania engineer?
I am.
And have you been qualified as an expert previously on matters of civil engineering?
I have.
And have you handed up at your CV, your curriculum vitae, and we've marked that as A2?
We have.
And does that accurately represent your qualifications?
It does.
And where did you go undergrad?
University of Delaware.
And as I mentioned, you are a registered Pennsylvania engineer.
Correct.
And how long have you been a registered Pennsylvania engineer?
10 years as well.
Now I'm going to refer, if we can pull it up, to what's been marked as A1B. Or, yeah, we're going to
Can I
try
have
to pull it
A2?
up. Yeah.
Let me just, before you
Or actually, it's
start.
A1A. And I'll refer to.
No, A2 is a CV, right?
Yes, A2 is a CV. John, I gave you a packet
Oh,
right there.
that's this?
That's that.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
CU 1.0.
Mr. Rice, have we been given A1B and A1E?
A1B is the landscape plan. A1E is the traffic
And
impact. assessment.
just so, yeah, what the plans that are marked CU, they're A1A, that's the conditional use plan. The plans that are marked L, they're the landscape plan that you would have in your packet as part of the submission. So right now, we were going to refer to what you would have in front of you as CU 1.00, which is part of A1A.
The conditional use plan submission.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll try to call it up on the screen in a second, so you can have it. There you go.
Mr. Rice, I did not receive a copy of A2, the CV. I don't need it this evening, but as long as I can get one before the next hearing.
Actually, I gave a packet to Norma, Bill, and maybe you should just. E is the traffic impact statement that is stated, Mr. Curley, it says conceptual stormwater management narrative. That's the A1D.
He was asking about the transportation study.
Yeah, that's,
Which we don't have, as far as I know.
Well, it's here. Just on the CV, you're presenting him as an expert witness.
Yes, we are. I would ask that he be
objection?
qualified as an expert in civil engineering.
Ask him any questions.
Just let me look at his CV for a moment, Mr. Rice. Thank you. Just a few, Mr. Rice, if I may. Mr. Tweedy, the A2, the CV that was just handed to me indicates that you've been qualified to testify as an expert in civil engineering in many of the municipalities in the area. Does that include Radnor Township?
Yes, previously for a zoning hearing a few months ago.
All right. And have you been qualified to testify as such in the Court of Common Pleas in Delaware County?
Not at the county level.
Okay. How about municipalities in the area of Radnor Township?
Most recently, East Whiteland Township for a zoning hearing.
Okay. No objection.
Okay.
He'll be accepted.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Tweedy, referring to what's been marked as A1A, and in particular the CU 1.00, what does this plan represent?
This is the campus boundary plan showing the holdings of Villanova University as a whole to give reference to the location of the CICD relative to the entire campus.
And this, what we're referring here is the main campus, I assume, correct?
Correct.
It does not include the conference center portion of Villanova that is further down County Line Road and not immediately adjacent to this land.
Correct. It does not include the conference center.
And this particular plan, C.10, approximately how many acres does it encompass?
The PI portion of the Villanova land is approximately 225 acres, and there's a portion of CO commercial zoning, which is approximately 15 acres. So the outline shown on the CU 1.0 is 240 acres.
Is there also some residential included on this plan?
Yeah, there's some very small pockets of residential houses that were.
And it's actually zoned residential as well?
Correct.
And the conference center, you know approximately how many acres the conference center
It's
is?
approximately 30 acres.
Right, so the area of Villanova, it does exceed more than 75 acres of planned institutional land.
Correct, it does.
And on this particular plan that we're looking at now, can you show the location of the CICD? Perhaps, maybe, yes, why don't you step up and use, or John could do it.
Yeah.
Could you, John, if you could show the
Yeah.
location, please?
I'll
of the
describe it, but the best way to reference the location of the CICD is what's currently referred to as the main lot and the Pike lot, which are on the south side of Lancaster Avenue, both on the west and east side of Ithan Avenue. So on the southwest corner of the Lancaster and Ithan intersection is what's known as the main lot, and on the southwest corner and on the southeast corner, directly adjacent to the Pike softball fields, is referred to as the Pike lot. So
And what is the size of the CICD?
it is 13.81 acres.
And that's the area that Villanova is designating as their CICD zone.
Yeah, we're identifying this as the use area for the CICD ordinance.
And is that area located entirely within the bounds of campus?
Yes, it is.
And it is in a single specified site?
It is.
And it's adjacent to each other?
It is.
And it's bisected by 8th Avenue, which is actually owned by Villanova, except for a right-of-way running through it.
Correct.
How many feet is the edge of the CICD from residential neighbors? In particular, let's look first on the eastern edge of the CICD. How far is that from any residential property line?
Yeah, on the Pikefield side, it is most adjacent to the Barleycone neighborhood, and it's a distance of 449 feet.
And then looking on, and then across the street on the north side is Villanova's main campus, is that right?
Correct. It's adjacent to its own campus on the north side.
And to the south is adjacent to what's known as the Aldwin Triangle.
Correct. On the main lot side, it's adjacent to the Aldwin Triangle, and on the Pikefield side, it's adjacent on the south to the South Campus dormitories.
And Villanova owns South Campus,
They do.
and Villanova also owns the Aldwin Triangle.
It does.
As to the southern portion of this site, how far is that from the various properties? For example, from looking south of the Aldwin Triangle, do you know approximately how many feet that is?
Yeah, it's approximately 400 to 500 feet as well.
Okay, and then looking, I guess it would be the southwest corner of this site, how many feet is it from the closest residential, from the nearest point of the CICD?
Yeah, from the Aldwin Lane neighborhood, it's about 235 feet from those adjacent residential neighbors.
And actually, the closest home is actually owned by Villanova, is that
Correct. The first home on Aldwin Lane is owned by Villanova, so it's 240 feet from the first residential home that's owned by someone other than Villanova.
Okay. Did you do an analysis of the current parking on campus?
Yes, we did.
And does that currently comply with Radnor Township code?
Yes, it does.
How many spaces are required currently, and how many does Villanova have?
In the current existing campus, prior to any development for the CICD, the code-required parking is 4,464 spaces, and the campus currently has 5,130 spaces available.
All right. Now, I'm going to refer to A3, which is the zoning table. If we can we pull that up, John? And actually, just referring to it, you did prepare A3, which is a zoning table consisting of a couple pages. Could you just tell the board what that zoning table represents, and we'll come back to it later as well.
Yeah. A3, as part of the CICD ordinance, there were specific uses relative to building coverage and impervious coverage for the CICD use itself within that 13.81 acres. But there was also a condition that anything that goes on inside the CICD must not bring the campus as a whole out of conformance with the base underlying PI zoning standards. So Exhibit A3, which is titled Campus-Wide Zoning Data, is an analysis of the 225-acre PI holding as a whole to show that it's still in compliance with the underlying PI standards.
Now, referring to the existing conditions on this site and referring to, let's refer first to 2.03, or that's 2.02 actually. What does that represent? And this is just a current condition.
Yeah, CU 2.02 is an existing features plan of the condition of what we referred to as the main lot on the southwest corner of Ithan and Lancaster, which is one of the parking lots that's part of the CICD use area.
And what is that area currently?
It's a current, just an asphalt surface parking lot, and it consists of 1,126 surface parking spaces.
And this is part of the areas being designated as the CICD.
Correct.
And referring to CU 2.03,
Similarly, this is a surface parking lot of 577 surface parking spaces that's referred to as the Pike Lot, and it's located on the southeast corner of Lancaster and Ithan intersection.
How many spaces was that?
577.
and referring to A4, which we have in the packet, there's a couple photographs of the existing condition, and as soon as we pull that up, if you can just describe what A4, that particular A4.
Yeah, this A4 that's on the screen now is an aerial photo of the main lot showing the surface parking lot and the 1,126 parking spaces.
And that's actually been marked as A4A.
Correct.
All right, and then A4B?
There's a similar photo of Pike Lot showing a surface parking lot, an asphalt surface parking lot containing the 577 surface parking stalls.
Now,
So the
referring,
Pike lot is on both sides of the street, not just one side?
The Pike Lot is just on the softball field side. The other side we refer to as the main lot.
the Pike lot would be this what you refer to as east of Ithan Avenue?
Correct.
The lot east of Ithan Avenue, and the main lot would be the lot
West
west
of
of Ithan
Ithan
Avenue. Now, referring to actually the plan that is being proposed here, which is actually 3.02 and 3.3, CU 3.02 and CU 3.03. And the board, for the board's edification, recall that this is all part of what's been marked as A1A. I'm going to refer to these CU plans here. What is the proposed development in an overview? What are we proposing here?
It's a comprehensive plan that's a mixture of residence halls with some ground floor retail embedded within the structures of the residence hall, a parking structure, and a performing arts center.
And are you redeveloping the existing surface parking lot on both Pike and Main parking lots we've been referring to them?
Yes, correct. Those two parking lots are the location of the CICD use area, and it's a redevelopment of both those parking lots to house those uses.
And what is the location of the CICD in relationship to public transit?
It's directly adjacent to two rail stations on the Norristown High-Speed Line. There's an R5 station on campus within walking distance in Villanova, and there's two SEPTA bus routes that have stops along the frontage, the 105 and the 106 bus line.
And the area designated as CICD by the applicant, is it only on lands being used by the university at the time of the adoption of the CICD?
Correct. It's isolated to those two parking lots which are currently used by the university.
And is it only on land currently zoned planned institutional?
Yes, it is.
Is it located on any grounds being used for by the university for any other purposes beside university purposes at this time?
It is not.
Is it divided by an arterial or a major street?
No, it is not.
An arterial or major, that would be Lancaster Avenue?
Yeah, Lancaster Avenue is viewed as an arterial, and it's
Okay.
entirely on the south side of Lancaster Avenue.
And as we mentioned, on the north side is Villanova's main campus.
Correct.
Is it divided by Ithan Avenue?
It is.
And what type of street is Ithan Avenue?
Ithan Avenue is classified as a minor collector by the subdivision code.
Now, referring to the uses, could you just describe in a broad sense and provide further testimony later as to what the uses of these proposed buildings will be?
Yes, as we said, on the main lot, which, as discussed, is on the west side of Ithan Avenue, is the residence halls with a combination of some ground floor retail. So starting at what we refer to as Church Walk, which is the first intersection directly adjacent to the walkway coming down from the church. Starting on the west edge of the site, you have two groups of buildings, which are a combination of each of three individual buildings connected together, which on the plans are denoted as starting from the west, traveling east. We have building A1, or 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, and 2C, creating two dorm complexes, each made up of three individual buildings. And those will be residence halls with some associated university retail on the ground floor of those buildings. On the Pike lot, which is on the east side of Ithan Avenue, is the parking structure on the south portion of that lot.
And we're referring to CU 3.03 now?
Yeah, this would be now shown on CU 3.03. So on the south side of Pike Lot is the parking structure, and on the north side of Pike Lot is a proposed performing arts center.
And what are you mentioned that you're going to have dwelling type units for the students, and how many beds are there going to be here?
The conditional use plans show a bed count of 1,159 beds.
And what type of dwelling units are we talking about?
The majority of them are apartment-style residence halls with a few singles mixed in.
And when you say apartment style, does that mean it has a kitchen? Is that?
Yeah, private bathroom and a small kitchen.
Will all the anticipated retail subordinate uses as defined in the CICD be located on the ground floor or the basement of these buildings?
Yes, they will.
Will all the retail uses be an integral part of the university?
Yes, they will.
How are they primarily designed?
They're designed to serve the institution as a whole for use by students, faculty, alumni, et cetera.
And one of the requirements of the CICD is they do not include any drive-through or drive-in services. Do any of these uses require a drive-through or drive-in service?
They do not. There are no drive-through services proposed.
Okay, now we referred to that A3 zoning table, if we can call that up again. Okay, in that first table, could you tell the board what that represents?
As previously stated, this is a campus-wide analysis specific to show that even after the CIC development occurs, the campus as a whole will still meet the underlying zoning provisions of the PI zoning district. So what we took was the last approved land development plan for Villanova University, which is shown in what's noted as the existing column, showing a 13% existing building coverage and a 37.6 total impervious coverage for the campus as a whole. And then we added in the building coverage created by the proposed residence halls and performing arts center, which creates a new 14.4% building coverage, which is still in compliance with the 30% maximum. And for the impervious coverage, there's actually a reduction in impervious due to the redevelopment of the parking lots. So the impervious coverage actually drops to 36% for the campus as a whole relative to a 45% ordinance criteria. So they're both in compliance with the underlying PI zoning standards.
And that was, you're just reading from A3A, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if we can go to A3B, and if you can tell the board what that represents.
Now, this is a specific zoning table relative to the 13.81 acre CICD use area that speaks to all the zoning standards specifically stated in the recently passed CICD ordinance.
And does the CICD meet all the zoning standards as passed by the ordinance?
It does.
Do you have there, is this on the total gross floor area of all the buildings in the CICD?
Yeah, the composite of all the gross floor areas of the buildings, excluding the parking structure, is 479,800 gross square feet.
And does the retail subordinate uses exceed or 5% of the total gross floor area of all the buildings?
It does not.
And will the total gross floor area for this retail subordinate uses exceed 25,000 square feet?
It does not.
Will the floor area of any retail use exceed 10,000 square feet?
It will not.
Now, referring to setbacks, when you mention the setbacks, where are they located from?
The CICD ordinance gave independent setbacks for arterial streets, major collectors, minor collectors, and railroad rights-of-way. So the chart includes a table of all those specific uses broken down by its adjacent either railroad classification or street classification.
And all those regulations meet the current CICD ordinance?
Yeah, the plan is in compliance with all setbacks.
And how about from railroad and rights-of-way line?
It is also in compliance with the railroad setbacks.
Are any of the buildings located more than 100 feet or less than 100 feet from any lot used for single-family residential purposes?
They are not. It's all outside 100 foot from residential properties.
Now, referring to building area and building coverage, what is the percentage occupied by buildings?
Including the parking structure, it's 37% coverage for the CICD use area.
And is there a requirement in the CICD regarding preservation of land?
Yes, the CICD allows you to go up to 45% building coverage, but if you go above the PI threshold of the 30% building coverage, you must preserve land at a 2-to-1 ratio of every square foot over the 30% that you propose.
Okay, and later on, we'll discuss that land preservation aspect, correct?
Yep.
All right. And as to impervious surfaces of the CICD meet the requirement for the CICD on impervious coverage?
Yes, it does. The code required that if there was an existing impervious coverage that was in excess of the underlying PI zoning, you were allowed to redevelop so long as you reduced that impervious coverage by more than 10%. The current Main and Pike parking lots are 92% impervious, so we've reduced it down to 69% impervious, which meets the 10% reduction requirement of the code.
And as you mentioned earlier, we still comply with the total campus requirement on impervious
Correct.
coverage.
Yes, both the CICD and the PI as a whole are compliant.
How about the height of the buildings? What will be the height of the buildings? Will they comply with the ordinance?
They will all comply with the individual standards for each specific use written into the ordinance.
And are they measured from existing grade?
Yeah, you take 20-foot intervals of the existing grade around the footprint of the building and compare all heights to that.
The fly law for the Performing Arts Center, will that comply with the ordinance?
Yes,
CICD
we will
ordinance?
limit that to the 65-foot requirement.
Could you describe the building length and spacing requirements of the code and if the plan complies?
Yeah, written into the code, there was a standard that you cannot have any section of a building more than 180 feet in length without a articulation that had at least a 6-foot setback or notch, and the ratio of those setbacks was 4-to-1. So if it was recessed into the building 6 feet, it would have to have that 6-foot notch for at least 24 feet in length. And the buildings have been designed to create that 6 by 24 minimum notch at least every 180 feet along any facade of any building.
Okay. Regarding riparian buffer, is there any regulated stream within the CICD?
Not within the CICD use area.
Okay, and is there a regulated stream, some other location south of the CICD?
Yeah, directly south on what was referred to previously as the Aldwin Triangle, which is on the south side of the railroad tracks on the west side of Ithan Avenue.
And we're referring to CU 3.02?
Correct. There is a spring that forms out of the toe slope of the railroad embankment and turns into a stream flowing through the Aldwin Triangle. That exists in that area, and the improvements are 82.5 feet away from that, which is in compliance with the 50-foot riparian setback written into the CICD use code.
Okay, now,
Is that exhibit up? Is that out? I couldn't follow that testimony, sorry.
sure, yeah, why don't you
Yeah.
go again, Alex?
It's up on the screen now. So as you see on the south side of the railroad right-of-way, you can see visually there's the railroad tracks, and there's a 90-foot wide railroad right-of-way. Within that railroad right-of-way, there's a spring that occurs at the base of the railroad slope and then flows south through the Aldwin Triangle and forms a stream. That's the start of the headwaters of that stream. That's the closest regulated water body to the CICD. Even though it's outside the actual use area, since it's within the railroad right-of-way, it's not necessarily subject to the CICD use ordinance, but we're just showing that it still meets the 50-foot setback. In fact, it's 82.5 feet from the start of that stream channel.
Yeah, so the regulation calls for a riparian buffer setback of 50 feet.
Correct.
And we're saying even though this isn't on the site, on the CICD site, this is 82 feet from any building or surface parking.
Correct.
We're on, Nick, we're on the other side of the railroad, right?
Yeah, this is on the south side of the railroad.
CU 3.02.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Now, we mentioned the preservation of land. Could you, I guess referring to A5, let's talk a little bit about the preservation of land.
Correct.
And could you describe what A5 represents?
Yeah, this is.
You've marked it here, I noticed, but I think we've already pre-marked it as A5, but I noticed it says CU 3.04.
Yeah. This was a sheet that was added into the plan set denoted as CU 3.04, and it's marked as Exhibit A5. It's an independent site plan showing in more detail what's referred to as the Aldwin Triangle, which, as previously discussed, is directly south of the main parking lot, which is part of the CICD use area. It's on the west side of Ithan Avenue, basically directly across Ithan Avenue from South Campus. So this is an independent site plan specific to that area. showing the limits of what we're calling the preserved land area to comply with the requirements. Since we were in excess of 30% building coverage up to the 37%, we're required to set aside preserved land as part of that building coverage calculation.
Okay, and how much land are you required to preserve, and how much did you preserve?
The 37% is 7% over the coverage, so that's 0.96 acres of excess building coverage on the CICD use. And as discussed, the code requires a 2-to-1 ratio of dedicated land. So we're required to set aside 1.2 acres of land, and we're offering
1.92, right?
1.92 acres of land, and we're offering 2.0 acres of land on this plan.
Now, you're indicating more of an area of preservation. Can you explain to the board what that represents? So it appears as if you're stating here that there's a much larger area that there's going to be no building on.
Yeah, as a part of the CICD code, you weren't allowed to use any area that was already protected from development in part of that calculation. So the area of preserved land we're giving, starting at Ithan Avenue, heading west, basically 300 feet at a minimum width, west of Ithan Avenue, and for the full width from Aldwin Lane all the way to the railroad tracks to the north. That area comprises approximately 3.5 acres. I believe it's 3.58 acres. But a portion of that land contains the stream that we just spoke about that starts underneath the railroad tracks and flows through that campus, and some adjacent wetland areas. So that area wasn't used in any of the calculations for the required preserved land. So of that 3.58 acres, 2 acres is outside of those original preserved areas and within building and parking setbacks that could be developed. So that's what we're offering as the preserved land criteria for this property.
And is the land that you are required to preserve, is it within 500 feet of the CICD boundary?
Yeah, it's directly south of the railroad right-of-way. So the railroad right-of-way is 90 feet, so it's directly south of that, within 500 feet.
Does it provide an additional buffer between the CICD and the residential properties along Aldwin Lane?
Yes, directly to the south of Aldwin Lane are residential homes along Aldwin Lane, so it provides that buffer in between those Aldwin Lane neighbors and the CICD use.
Is it one contiguous area?
It is all on one lot, yes.
Is it divided by streets or right-of-way?
It is not.
Does it have a maximum horizontal dimension of 200 feet in every direction?
Yes, it does.
And will it have any buildings, paving, or structures except for walkways and passive park improvements?
It will have no buildings or structures, just walkways and passive park improvements.
We referred to the current parking requirement under the code. Could you tell the board how many parking spaces are being proposed here and where those parking spaces will be located?
Yeah. The best plan for reference for a kind of a global parking review would be the CU 1.0, which is the overall campus plan within Exhibit A1A. And on that plan, we have what's called a campus parking analysis, which is in the lower left corner of that plan. What we did was as previously testified to, we reviewed the current campus as it sits today and reviewed against the code provisions for required parking. And as stated, there's 4,464 spaces currently required and 5,130 spaces currently available. So there's a surplus of parking on site that's about 666 spaces. So then what we did was, as part of the CICD use, the proposed residence halls, the proposed retail, and the proposed performing arts center, we added in all the required zoning code, or the code provisions for all those required uses, which increased the total spaces required on campus to 5,051 spaces. And we are providing, on the campus as a whole, 5,149 spaces. So we're compliant with the code requirements with still 98 excess parking spaces throughout the campus as a whole.
And where would they be located? Can you point them out on CU 1.00?
Yes. The main area where the majority of the parking is provided is on Pike Lot in the parking garage, which holds 1,265 cars. And then on the main lot where the residence halls are proposed, there's a driveway that goes in between the south of those halls and the railroad track that have 59 surface parking spots along that area. Directly to the west of Church Walk, which we'll speak about later, which is where the pedestrian bridge is being installed, there's an existing visitor's lot that's there today that's going to have to be redeveloped to make room for the pedestrian bridge. So after development, that will have 45 stalls. And then the West Lancaster parking lot continuing further west, which is an area we refer to as the West Lancaster parking. That's west of Church Walk, south of Lancaster Avenue, behind the converted single-family homes along that portion of the road. There's a surface parking lot there, which is proposed to be 316 surface parking stalls. In addition to that, we're proposing expansions to 2 existing parking structures on campus. The HSB garage, which is the Health Services building, and the St. Augustine garage, which is the SAC building, parking deck. Both of those are currently a 2-level garage, the ground level parking plus 1 supported level. Both of those are proposed to get 1 additional level added on top of that. So the St. Augustine, the SAC garage, will go up to 404 cars in that garage, and the Health Services building garage will be expanded to 263 cars. That's for the SAC garage, that's an increase of 133 more cars, and for the HSB garage, that's an increase of 63 cars in that garage.
Now, you refer to West Lancaster Avenue. I'm going to show you CU 2.01, and again, this is part of A1A, and could you tell the board what that represents?
Yeah, as discussed, the area we refer to as the West Lancaster is west of Church Walk, west of the pedestrian bridge and visitor lot area, traveling basically from main campus towards the 320 and 30 intersection. There's a series of 5 supporting university buildings there, each with independent driveways and independent small parking fields. As part of this application, we're proposing to close all those existing driveways along the frontage to improve traffic flow, consolidate them into 1 single point of access that's a right-in and right-out only driveway, and then along the rear of those homes, do a surface parking lot in that area.
And is that what we are showing on 3.01?
Yes, that is
CU
depicted on
3.01.
CU 3.01, which is the 2.01 was the existing features of the West Lancaster lots, and 3.01 is the proposed site plan for the proposed West Lancaster parking lot.
This area is zoned commercial office?
It is.
Is it part of Villanova's entire campus?
It is.
Is any of it zoned residential?
None of this portion, no.
And this is surface parking, as you mentioned?
Correct.
And was the genesis of basically this slide is to remove parking from Ethan Avenue?
Yeah, it had 2 main points. During preliminary discussions during the ordinance, the idea was to distribute more parking throughout different portions of campus to help with traffic distribution and traffic flow and reduce the height of the garage, which when the code discussion first started was a 6-level garage, and we reduced the height of that garage and relocated some of the parking to this area.
If we can pull up A3C, and if you can tell the board what A3C represents, Alex.
Similar to the other A3 exhibits, A and B, this is just a specific zoning table for the CU, the Commercial Office District standards of this portion of the campus. Since it's a separate zoning district, we did independent zoning calculations that these uses, once consolidated, there's individual lots there today, they'll be consolidated during the subdivision land development process. And this table shows that they would comply with all underlying setbacks of that zoning district for this proposed redevelopment.
Are you providing the necessary number of off-street loading spaces as required by the CICD?
Yeah, the CICD requires one loading space for every 20,000 square feet of retail use within the CICD provisions, and we will provide at least one loading space, which would be the requirement for the proposed retail uses we have shown.
And what would be the size of the parking spaces?
There's different standards within the code for different portions of the campus. So within
Within the CICD?
Within the CICD area itself, which is the surface parking spots directly to the south of the dorms, they will be 9 feet wide and 19 feet long. And then within the parking structure, which is on the Pike Field, they can be 8.5 feet wide and 19 feet long, which is what is proposed.
How about site lighting? Can you describe what site lighting is going to be on this site?
Yeah, once again, the CICD code had specific standards built into the ordinance with that. So the lighting for the property would be designed so that there's no more than a 0.5-foot candle level beyond any property line, and they would be designed in accordance with the International Dark Sky Association full cutoff requirements.
Now, let's refer to site access, and maybe we can call up A6. All right, Alex, I believe this has been marked as A6A, and if you can describe what this represents, and in particular, if you could tell us a little bit about the internal circulation of the site.
Yeah, A6 is basically a color rendered site plan of the conditional use plans. There are some revisions from what was submitted originally shown on this plan based on some meetings and discussions we've had with the neighbors and different groups since the plans have been submitted, and it's a in-progress working drawing of some of the new changes to the area. But it basically depicts the CICD use globally, showing from Church Walk to the eastern edge of Pike parking lot with the garage and the Performing Arts Center. So on the left side of the screen, the west edge of the site, you'll see that there is a driveway proposed at where we refer to as Church Walk, which would be a traffic signal controlled intersection, and they would allow all full turning movements into and out of the development at that location. We're envisioning 1 lane in, 2 lanes out, allowing dual left turns out of the complex. And there would be improvements to Lancaster Avenue in that location to provide a left turn in from Lancaster Avenue and a dedicated right turn in to the property from the eastbound traffic. Coming in that Church Walk driveway, you would go to the rear of the site, travel underneath the pedestrian bridge, and then as previously discussed, there's a 2-lane driveway that has parking along it behind the dorms, in between the residence halls and the railway, and then it would travel over to Ithan Avenue to create a 4-way intersection with the main entrance to the parking garage on the opposite side of Ithan Avenue. That's the main circulation through that core area. When you get into the Pike lot side where the parking garage is, as stated, creating a 4-way intersection just north of the Norristown High Speed Line underpass coming up. There's a 4-way intersection, which is a 2-way intersection into the parking garage, which comes into the lower level of the garage. And then the other main access point into and out of the garage is on the north side, facing Lancaster Avenue, in between the Performing Arts Center and the softball field. There's a 2-way drive lane that takes you out to Lancaster Avenue east of the Ithan intersection, which will allow the ability to distribute flow depending on the destination of traffic.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You'll also see a driveway in between the Performing Arts Center and the proposed garage. That's a loading driveway only, used for deliveries to get to the rear of the Performing Arts Center for deliveries to the loading dock in the rear. And there's also a 1-lane exit out of the proposed garage. That's an event-only driveway used if the police need to get more cars out of the garage during events. It's there for their use.
Going back to the eastern or western portion of this site, Can you talk a little bit about the pedestrian bridge?
Yeah, as part of the CICD use, there was a requirement to provide a pedestrian bridge to help with pedestrian circulation through the campus. We chose this location because of the proximity of the academic buildings on campus, and that being the majority of the destination traffic for students. 70% of the academic buildings are on the western side of campus. This area was selected for two reasons: because of the proximity of those uses and the topography of the church. The bridge is actually able to start at grade on the northern side of Lancaster Avenue because the topography raises up as you head towards the church. So there's no need for any staircases on that side, which increases usership of the bridge. Basically, it will extend all the way from the bridge, traveling south. It will go over Lancaster Avenue, travel through the western edge of the CICD use area, and travel all the way to the SEPTA station at the rear, where there will be a platform that will connect to the existing overpass that exists now, that's currently used by South Campus students coming up through the Aldwin Triangle and coming across to cross at Church Walk today. They're already elevated over the railroad, so we're just going to continue that traffic across and take them all the way to campus at the church.
Referring to A6B.
Well, excuse me, how do the other students get on the walkway?
Directly to the south of Lancaster, where there's the large pedestrian plaza in front of the buildings, there's a staircase that will bring you up onto the bridge at that location. And at the south edge, at the platform, there's also a handicap ramp and a set of staircases on the north side of the railroad track to get up and down from the bridge as well.
And are we going to provide some fencing? I know that's going to be later testimony from one of the architects, but if you can just briefly describe.
Yeah,
what's being
the
proposed.
main concern is the best way to maximize usage of the bridge and make pedestrian traffic at an at-grade crossing of Church Walk to be as difficult as possible to force people up onto the bridge and across. So what we're proposing is on the north side of Lancaster, there's already a fence for the majority of that frontage. We would propose to continue that fence and extend it all the way to the bridge, tie it directly into the bridge abutment, and the existing stairs that are there today that go up to Church Walk would be eliminated. So if you were to cross Lancaster Avenue at grade, you couldn't get up onto campus. It would really just be for public traffic that's traveling along Lancaster Avenue. So anyone that's trying to get into campus would have to be up onto the bridge and come across that fence and onto campus through the bridge and up to the church, rather than coming up from the sidewalk that exists on the north side of Lancaster and coming up into campus that way. Also for safety concerns, to eliminate any kind of jaywalking across, there's a fence on the south side of the road that would extend once again from the bridge abutment at the pedestrian bridge all the way east to Ithan Avenue to force crossings at the two intersections and to force people up and onto the bridge.
I'm referring to A6B, and could you just tell the board what this represents?
This is, once again, a colored rendering of the site plan. This is the West Lancaster parking area that we spoke about. This is different than what was submitted on the conditional use plan application. In meeting with some of the township residents and neighbors, they asked for a rotation of the parking 90 degrees so that the parking spaces face parallel to Lancaster instead of towards their residences, to eliminate any kind of headlight glare from parked cars. So and they also asked us to push some of the parking north, closer to Lancaster Avenue, and force it in between the buildings. So this is a working sketch on how we believe we can accommodate some of their concerns. And it basically shows the proposed layout of both what's called the West Lancaster parking, and then immediately adjacent to the pedestrian bridge and the drive aisle is a small parking lot, which was referred to as the visitor lot.
Could, Mr. Cornelia, could you clarify one thing? Am I correct that the west parking area that he just talked about is not part of the CICD?
That is correct.
Correct. It's outside the CICD area.
Is it part of your application?
It's showing where the parking is going to be located. So to that effect, it is because we're showing where parking is located elsewhere on campus to meet the parking requirements of the zoning code.
Okay.
So that is technically why it's being included and why the other two levels on main campus parking structures are being included also. Did you prepare a conceptual stormwater management narrative?
Yes, we did.
And that's been marked as A1D?
Correct.
And could you tell the board what that represents and what your analysis found and concluded?
Yeah, this is a summary of the stormwater management requirements of the township and what would be applicable to the application as it moves into land development process. With stormwater, as we discussed during the zoning process and again here tonight, stormwater really has to be designed and reviewed as part of the land development process. Until we have a site plan and do a lot of on-site investigation and finalize the layout of the buildings so that we're able to locate specifically where stormwater facilities are going to be located. We can't necessarily get into the specifics of the stormwater code, but what this narrative does is it's a high-level executive summary of what standards would apply to this application and what this requirement would be, what this application would be required to comply with, both from a peak rate, which is your detention basins standpoint, and also a volume control, whether it's infiltration of stormwater or any other kind of stormwater practice that would physically remove volume of stormwater from the property.
Are you providing best management practices for stormwater management?
Yes, what we envision, as a baseline of the code, you're required to do detention systems to comply with what's referred to as Stormwater District B2, which is the portion of the township that this application is located in. So that has a detention requirement for it. So there would be detention systems which would help with the large storm events and any flooding that results from large storm events. And then there's some smaller stormwater practices that are distributed throughout the site, such as rain gardens would be the majority of what we're looking to use in this area, which would help with groundwater recharge, also known as infiltration, and help reduce the volume of runoff from the property. At this time, we're still working on the geotechnical testing for the property, trying to figure out what the soil conditions are underneath the site. So we're not fully designed yet to know exactly what we can do on the property. The reason we chose rain gardens is they have a lot of flexibility, because even if soils are poor underneath the parking lot, rain gardens can still do a good job of volume reduction. Even if they can't physically infiltrate water, the plants absorb a lot of water. Rain gardens are heavily used in the city of Philadelphia because of that specific nature, since they do have a lot of urban redevelopment. With some sites with poor soils, they rely heavily on rain gardens. So it's a good fit for this site, depending on what's underneath the parking lots. If it's great soil underneath the parking lots, then those detention systems can also be used as infiltration systems and be open on the bottom so that any water that goes into them can soak into the ground as well.
The plans, the conditional use application requires you to provide utility and drainage systems. Has that been done?
Yeah, the conditional use application has another set of drawings, which is the CU, what we'll call, I guess, the 4 series, 4.01, 4.02, and 4.03, which are included to meet the standards of the CICD ordinance to just show what we envision to be locations for the sanitary sewer system, the stormwater system, the water, the electric system, et cetera.
On the CICD site that's been designated, are there any floodplains?
There are not.
Are there any waterways?
There are not.
Any heavily wooded areas?
There are not.
Any steep slopes?
Nope.
Any sensitive natural features?
No, it's an existing parking lot.
As to sewage disposal, where are we sending the sewage here?
We are envisioning sending the sewer down Ithan Avenue into Lower Merion Township and connecting into Lower Merion Township system at the intersection of Ithan Avenue and County Line Road.
How about water supply?
We are envisioning that will connect to a public main on most likely Ethan Avenue. We already have a will serve letter from Aqua Pennsylvania, and basically the utilities are all being fed into the eastern edge of Building 2C and distributed throughout the buildings throughout that area. So the electric, water, most of the majority of the utilities, except sanitary and storm drainage, would come in to that specific area and then be distributed throughout the buildings internally.
In your opinion, what is the adequacy of this site from an engineering perspective for development?
This site is adequate for the development proposed.
Has there been any, in choosing this location for the CICD, were there any mitigation efforts put into choosing this particular location?
The biggest opportunity for mitigation for this is that it's a redevelopment of two existing parking lots and not a greenfield development. Villanova is not going out and buying a raw piece of ground to develop residence halls. They're taking existing developed lands on their campus that have no stormwater system, have sat there as parking lots for years, and redeveloping it. In doing so, we're able to reduce impervious coverage by almost 3 acres or 2.5 acres on the main parking lot and add stormwater systems to that area. And it's adjacent to the rail lines and adjacent to campus, and it's a great area for redevelopment.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Give me a minute, please. Mr. Tweedy, sir, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank
Good,
you.
thank you. On July 18th, the Township's municipal engineer, Roger Phillips of Gannett Fleming, issued an engineering review letter regarding this application. Is that correct?
He did, yes.
And have you had an opportunity between then and now to address the concerns raised by Mr. Phillips in that review letter?
Well, not all of those comments are specific to civil engineering in nature, but we've reviewed his comments, provided him some additional information, the majority of which are the additional exhibits in the package currently, and we have some responses to his comments. On item 1, the tabulation of the gross square footage for each use, that was already provided on the sheets listed directly on each individual building, but
Mr. Tweedy?
Yes.
Let's just, up here, let's just stop for a minute.
Okay.
Let's mark this letter, because I don't think it's been marked yet. So this will be a, since this is a township engineer review letter, we'll call it T1, Mr. Bola, is that?
That's fine.
We'll call it T1. It's a July 18th, 2014 letter from Gannett Fleming, which is, and it's a review of the Villanova conditional use submission. So that'll be marked as T1.
And the commissioners are possessed of copies of this?
Well, probably not.
Okay.
So
Right.
it wasn't going to be distributed or talked about till tonight, so
Right.
I have a copy if anyone wants to look at this.
All right, well then, if, in order for this to make sense, this discussion and these questions to make sense, I'll have to preface it somewhat with what the comment was from the engineer, with apologies.
Yeah, that's
So you just mentioned, Mr. Tweedy, item number 1 in the general comments from Gannett Fleming. And that requested a tabulation of gross square footage for each of the uses on sheet 3.02, which are the dormitory, performing arts, dormitory and retail uses. Is that correct?
that is correct. So on the original CU 3.2 application, we just on the table, the site use data table at the lower portion of the plan, we just listed the individual totals for the Performing Arts Center, the dormitory use, and the retail as a whole, with the individual breakdowns being shown on the face of the plans for each individual building. That's why we provided exhibit
A3?
A3B, which is the zoning table specific to the CICD use itself. That, in the lower right corner of that exhibit, you'll see the site use data table has been expanded to give the breakdown of each individual residence hall building, building 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, and 2C, to further clarify how we determine the total 384,800 gross square foot of dormitory use, and then the breakdown of the 3 retail uses to better identify the 17,000 gross square foot of retail use. And as stated, they're also identified on CU 3.02 within, specifically for the retail uses on the face of the plan and the plan view.
And that breakdown, once performed, shows that the building area is in compliance with the requirements for the CICD ordinance. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. The second comment, and we might spend some time on this. The second comment I'll read first so that for the benefit of the commissioners. It says, the existing downstream conveyance system must be evaluated for its condition and adequacy to effectively convey stormwater from the site in a safe and efficient manner. Now, you testified a bit about stormwater management. Are you the expert on that?
Yes, I am.
And you've indicated generally that the stormwater facilities that are to be designed and installed aren't yet designed or installed because you're still in the investigatory stage. You haven't received the right levels of approvals to get there yet, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All of that means then that you have not yet determined what stormwater management facilities will be employed to meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Correct, but specific to downstream conveyance, there's 2 major locations, I believe, of concern for the CICD use. It drains to 2 areas. The Pike Field improvements drain on the north side of the railroad, traveling east through what we'll refer to as the Barleycone Lane neighborhood. There's a discharge through that portion. And then a portion, the western portion of Pike Lot and all of Main Lot travels into the drainage system of Ithan Avenue, travels underneath the railroad underpass into South Campus. There's an existing detention basin in the, what we'll call the southeast corner of South Campus, and then that discharges through that adjacent neighborhood, traveling east further through there. So we can speak to a few items on how this development will help improve that downstream conveyance system. And it's part of the reason that this area was selected for this redevelopment, because it gives the opportunity to take what is basically a 92% impervious coverage area, 13 acres of 92% coverage, and reduce the impervious down to the 69%. That in itself, just by nature of that much reduction of impervious cover, improves downstream conveyance just by reducing the coverage on the property, introducing more green spaces, allowing more lawn areas to soak up rainwater. In addition to that reduction in impervious coverage, the baseline stormwater code that has to be complied with in the what's called the B2 stormwater district is detention system requirements that have what's referred to as peak rate reductions, which in this district, you have to take, after development, a 50-year storm event has to operate as though it's a 10-year storm event prior to construction. So that creates much less water coming off the property at any one single time, and most of it being stored inside the site in a large pipe system or vault system underneath the parking lot, most likely, where that water will be slowly metered out, which will allow any kind of drainage pipe or stream channel downstream to operate more efficiently because it's seeing less water at any one immediate time. So the combination of the reduction in impervious coverage on main lot and the installation of these required stormwater systems that meet the standards of the B2 Stormwater District will greatly improve drainage systems within Ethan Avenue, downstream through South Campus and through the Brookley Road development traveling east. In addition, on the Pike Field, I don't know how many people remember when the softball field press box was redeveloped. As a part of that approval, even though the press box was only 0.7 acres of development, during that process, they had already agreed at that time that they would take all of the Pike parking lot that drains into the softball field and provide not even code compliant stormwater, in excess of code compliant stormwater for that parking lot. They assumed that that parking lot was grass in existing condition, not pavement, and they still accepted 1.7 acres of that parking lot plus the press box and controlled that all the way down to an assumed lawn pre-development condition to already alleviate some of these downstream concerns even when that was done. What that would do is basically control the parking garage, and then we would have to provide stormwater management similar to what we're doing for main lot for the Performing Arts Center itself.
Would you agree that there's also some stormwater runoff that occurs to the southwest of the property? Doesn't the land...
You're going to have to speak to the mic so people
I'm
can
sorry.
hear you.
Would you agree that there is also stormwater runoff to the southwest of the CIDC property and also the adjacent proposed parking field because that's where the slope of the ground goes?
Yeah, basically the high point or the drainage divide in that area is generally in the location of the pedestrian bridge. So the entire residence hall area and the CICD use would drain towards Ethan Avenue. And then the West Lancaster parking lot, though it's outside the CICD use provision, there would also be requirements to provide township stormwater control for West Lancaster parking, which drains west towards the 3320 intersection.
All right. The comment made by the engineer would be an evaluation of the existing downstream conveyance system. Are you aware that the existing system is not functioning as it should?
We haven't evaluated it fully yet, but we would work with the township to review those standards.
So generally you would agree that should the township engineer ascertain for you the areas that need to be evaluated for their current condition with a view towards improvement, Villanova would cooperate with the engineer in that regard?
Yeah, and I believe that the Township Stormwater Code gives the township the authority to require, stormwater for areas of known problems.
Yes.
In addition, the West Lancaster parking lot drains into PennDOT roadway, so there's also PennDOT oversight that we would have to comply with, at least specifically for the West Lancaster parking, and any improvements for turn lanes along the frontage would also be subject to PennDOT oversight, and we would obviously work with the PennDOT engineers.
Great. And specifically then, you would agree that you would perform evaluations, Villanova, that is, the applicant would perform evaluations to the southeast and southwest of the proposed development to determine the condition of the existing downstream conveyance system.
Yeah, we would review the receiving conveyance channels, or receiving conveyance pipes.
I get it. Okay. Thank you for that. There are also alternative manners and means of handling stormwater and creating stormwater facilities than those that you propose or those that are required by the ordinance, are there not?
There are.
Okay. And I'm sure that you will hear during this hearing from an engineer on behalf of the Delaware Riverkeeper with some suggestions for those types of alternatives. I assume that you're willing to listen.
We are, and we've also already met with Dr. Traver, who's a faculty member at Villanova that does a lot of stormwater research in the state of Pennsylvania, and we've already worked with him to create some lists of alternatives that we can review, and we will be happy to hear any more suggestions to add to that list.
Great. Now, I'm a stormwater dunce, so I don't pretend to have a great deal of expertise in this area, but what I'm told is that there's ponding that has been occurring on neighboring properties in the Brook-Lee and Aldwin Lane areas. Does that make sense to you? I mean, based upon the fact that you've got the acres of existing parking area, it makes sense that that could be occurring down there?
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. I'm also told that it's not the 2-year storm or the 5-year storm or the 10-year storm that's causing the problems, but it's a heavy storm in the first instance that ponds and doesn't drain as much as it should. Is that conceivable to you as a stormwater engineer?
It's conceivable, yes.
Okay. So, and again, this is conditional use hearing where we're the applicant seeking to approve the use only, not the development. So Villanova, as I understand it, is intending to be as cooperative as it can be in dealing with alternatives, if possible, to handling the stormwater.
Yeah, we're open to hear any suggestions or recommendations to review as
Great.
far as stormwater practices they'd like to see on the project.
Thank you. And I know this is not within your area of expertise. That is the general comment number 3, which we will skip over for now for the Board of Commissioners. That has to do with the preparation of a specific, the commissioners have this before them now? Oh, okay. All right, so we're going to skip over number 3, which deals with an event circulation study, and 4, which deals with an evacuation plan for students in the new dorms. And you've mentioned in some detail the fencing that you propose, which is discussed in number 5.
Yes, we
This
presented that.
fencing is essentially
A6.
This is number 5 on Mr. Phillips' letter. The fencing is designed to prevent pedestrian crossing, or at least discourage pedestrian crossing at places along Lancaster Avenue from the proposed dormitory area across Lancaster to the main campus area. Is that right?
Correct.
And you mentioned 2 fences, one on the north side and one on the south side. Let's talk about the north side first. The north side fence would extend for that entire area. How would it be connected? How would there not be pass-throughs? And describe the fence, if it's envisioned yet.
Yeah, well, there is already a fence there today for the majority of that frontage. It's an existing, yeah, you can see it generally in the photo that's there today.
Is that a chain link?
No, it's I guess more like a wrought iron
Okay.
fence. It's about, we believe, between 4 and 6 feet high today, set back from the sidewalk that basically keeps separating the campus from the public sidewalk on the north side of the roadway. It currently travels all the way from Ithan Avenue to the west. In the lower left-hand corner of that picture, you can see a driveway that heads up into the church with a gate that's required to be there. They need that driveway for funerals, et cetera, to get cars in and out of the church. What we'd envision to do is we'd still need to leave a gated access at that driveway, but on the further west of that, we would continue that fence, similar style, similar height, and tie into that existing fence or gate abutment that's there today and provide a similar fence traveling all the way to the abutment of the bridge that would basically prevent people from shortcutting around the bridge and sneaking up into campus. The one area where there is a potential for pedestrian access is through the gate at the church. So we're open to discussions on any modifications needed to that gate to make it, right now it's just a single arm gate, so there's an opportunity to replace that gate with something that's more substantial to block more pedestrians.
Will there be access for pedestrian crossway underneath the bridge at Church Walk, underneath the proposed pedestrian bridge?
That's still in discussions with PennDOT, but our current belief and understanding is that since there is a bus stop for the SEPTA bus station that runs up and down Lancaster on that side, and some people get off that bus and then travel to the train station directly to the south, that we believe we need to maintain at least one at-grade crossing for the public use that's not using anything on campus, but rather getting dropped off on a bus on the north side of Lancaster Avenue, having to cross Lancaster Avenue and come down to the train station at the south side of the bridge.
All right, then what precludes, I apologize if you've already said this, but what precludes students from using that crosswalk?
Well, if they're
also?
on the south side of campus and they crossed there, they wouldn't be able to get up onto campus unless they went all the way east, all the way to Ithan, came around the fence and walked all the way back. Like we said, 70% of classrooms are on the west side of campus, so you would never cross underneath the bridge, travel all the way to Ithan to the east, come around the fence and walk all the way back west. You might make that mistake once, but the second time you're going to go up on the bridge, go to the church and go to your
So
class.
you're going to have to have a barrier on that driveway, so it's a pedestrian.
Yeah, what we
barrier.
said is we'd be open to discussions to make it a more substantial gate that could remain closed except for funerals or any time we need access to that driveway. It would stay closed, and then for any use of the church that needed vehicle access, we would open up the gates for that time.
Okay. And you mentioned the fence on the south side of Lancaster. Where is that depicted on the plan?
It's the thin black line, and you'll see the text that says new painted steel fence.
Okay, yes.
Basically, what's there today is curb line, sidewalk, and then pretty much goes right into parking lot with a small landscape buffer.
Okay.
What we envision, it'd be a similar location to that fence, but what we're in discussions with and what our thought is to eliminate the sidewalk that's directly adjacent to the curb, both from a safety standpoint, and we don't believe it's needed since we're providing the large pedestrian plaza along the frontage. So what we want the new cross-section to be would basically be Lancaster Avenue, the curb line, a green space, a fence, more green space, and then the pedestrian walkway inside the site through there. And then the fence would extend all the way, once again, from the abutment of the bridge all the way to Ithan. So once you came into the CICD area, you'd be on that sidewalk. You wouldn't be able to jaywalk across Lancaster. You'd only be able to cross on the west side at the bridge to get to campus, or on the east side at the existing crossings at Ithan.
All right, and the bridge will be accessible on the west side there at Church Walk by climbing a set of stairs?
There's a couple access points along that large pedestrian plaza. There's a set of stairs envisioned there, and then at the rear of the site, where it abuts to the existing SEPTA crossing, there's a switchback ADA accessible ramp for handicap usage to get up onto the bridge, and then also a set of stairs at that location.
All right, so students who live in the first dormitory there closest to the west side, thank you, sir, would come out of their dorm, walk down a pathway, and then walk up the steps?
Correct. Yeah, as you can see, it's shown there's individual archways through all the buildings. So the main pedestrian corridor connecting all the buildings is basically an archway tunnel system. That walkway is basically external to the dorms. All the doors into and out of the dorms are loaded on that walkway inside those tunnels. So you would be able to walk down that center corridor through all the buildings. And as part of the process, when the bridge was added, we created that diagonal cut through to direct all that pedestrian traffic directly to that large pedestrian plaza at the base of the stairs, and then located the staircase right there. So as you come out of your dorm buildings and head west, you're funneled along that pedestrian walkway, come out of the buildings, and then you're in that large plaza with the staircase right there to head up.
All right, so with regard then to the eastern side of the dormitory structures, the easternmost dorms, what precludes or discourages the students there from crossing that grade at Ithan?
It really depends where your classes are. We can't say that every student's going to go use the bridge. If your classes are on the east side of campus, you're still going to cross at Ithan. It's a destination issue.
But you will agree that there's going to be many students that'll cross there too.
Yeah, it's going to be depending on where you live and where your classes are. If you live in the easternmost dorm and your class is on the easternmost edge of campus, you're going to cross at Ithan. What we're trying to do is create as many pathways that funnel you towards the bridge. And like we said, 70% of the classroom space is on that western side of campus. So we feel that the Church Walk area is the best place for a bridge to promote the maximum usage of a elevated crossing.
Okay. Identify the location of the bookstore,
The proposed bookstore?
the proposed bookstore.
It's, on the conditional use plans, it was noted for what's now labeled on Exhibit A6, is that retail 9750
So
square foot.
towards that Ethan Avenue
Correct.
intersection. So that's going to be likely accessed by pedestrians from Ethan Avenue also.
It would be possible, yeah, there'll be doorways along that front pedestrian plaza for all the retail uses.
Okay. Now, the plan that you presented this evening, incidentally, let me find it. The A6 set of plans, A6A and A6B, they have been revised since the plans were last submitted. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is the current working drawings that have been refined both for some architectural review internally and some discussions with neighbor groups and township staff.
What were the changes that were made as a result of discussions with neighbor groups and township staff?
The neighbor group, the most of the changes highlighted on the A6B, the West Lancaster parking, whereas we limited the redevelopment of that parking lot. On the original conditional use plans, it was a long linear parking field that went all the way from the visitor lot all the way west to Stone Hall, which is actually not even shown on this plan. What we changed as a result of the discussions is there was a request to flip the parking stalls 90 degrees to prevent some headlight glare issues and to force more parking forward towards Lancaster and away from the Aldwin Lane neighbors to increase the space available for buffering along the rear of that property. So that's...
So let me interrupt you there. Did you increase the area for buffering? Did you increase the buffer area or its width?
Yes, the width is larger than it was on the original
What's the
plan.
proposed, what's under A6A, what's the proposed buffer width?
Well, it's A6B.
B.
And we're still tweaking the design, but I believe it's in some areas now closer to 30 feet rather than 20 feet.
All right, so the ordinance required 20, and you've had some input from residents who would like it greater than 20.
Yeah.
And so this is your attempt now to...
Yeah,
to
we've
attempt to-
maximized it as great as possible. On the eastern edge, we still have to align with the pedestrian bridge crossings and the SEPTA parking in that area, so there's a limit with the driveway alignment to connect to the main intersection. There's some limits as what we can do there, but we eliminated most of the parking on the south side of that driveway, except for all the way at the west edge, but that west edge is cut into the hillside and shielded by topography at that edge, where it'll be cut in 6 to 8 feet below the existing level, so those cars will be hidden. So
Okay.
we located, the only time we located parking on the south side there was when it was depressed and shielded from view to help with the buffering.
All right, back to the east end, that indentation again that you were pointing out on the southeast, yeah, right. Now, that's right adjacent to residential structures, correct?
Yeah, the parking
That's the closest residential structure, in fact, is it not?
Yes, but that parking right there is actually SEPTA parking that has to be maintained for the station. So
Understood.
there's 19 SEPTA parking stalls. The ones that the cursor on now, immediately across the drive aisle, and then actually in the visitor's lot, we have to mark some of those for SEPTA use only. We have to maintain SEPTA, it's going to require 19 parking spaces dedicated for their use to maintain their parking at that,
All right,
at
so then
that station.
if I'm looking at this correctly, then there's a 90-foot, I heard you say there's a 90-foot right-of-way for the rail line, correct?
Correct.
So
yeah.
there's 45 feet on the north side of the rail line before
Correct.
you get to the property line.
Right.
Then you've got depicted there some vegetation and trees. That's to be your buffer area that you're saying is now approximately 30 feet wide.
Correct.
Okay. Then you've got a driveway, is that right? An
Correct.
access way.
Yep.
Okay. And what's the width of that? Is that 24?
It's a 22-foot drive aisle, which is the Radnor code.
Okay. I get all those, didn't I? Okay.
Mr. Ball, before you go, had a couple of suggestions that we take a break. We've been going for 2 hours. So let's take about a 10-minute break, and then you can pick up
Great, thanks.
where you left. And then anyone else who has questions for this witness, we're going to try to get this witness done tonight, hopefully.
All right, we are back in session. Mr. Bola?
All right. Mr. Tweedy, I'm going back to what's been marked as Exhibit T1 now, the Gannett Fleming letter of July 18th. And going to direct your attention to item number 6 on that letter. And that references something that you've testified to already also concerning the handling of the sanitary waste.
Correct.
You've indicated that's going to go to Lower Merion.
Correct.
Is there amendment to strike that? Is that consistent with the current Act 537 plan in effect here in Radnor Township?
It is not, and as part of the land development application, we would have to file a new planning module application for a revision to the 537 plan.
So as part of land development, you would agree then that the Act 537 would have to be modified in order to accommodate, both here and in Lower Merion, I would assume, to accommodate your proposal?
Yes, and there's a current intermunicipal agreement with Lower Merion Township. A portion of the campus already is sewered by Lower Merion Township for West Campus and the law school. The northern side of the R5 rail line is already sewered in Lower Merion Township. So as part of that process, we would have to amend that intermunicipal agreement as well as part of the 537 review process.
All right, great. Mr. Phillips then makes some comments regarding the zoning and specifically the ordinance that was enacted in March, the CICD ordinance. Number 1 deals with the building area exceeding 30% and the obligation created under the ordinance to offer a 2-for-1 open space, 2 square feet to 1 square foot open space for each percent over that.
Correct.
Now, your plan, you've testified, meets that definition in the provision of, and you told me, I forget the exact number of square feet that was going to be provided in compliance?
Yeah, we're required to dedicate 1.92 acres, and we're proposing a 2-acre dedication, which is in excess of the requirement.
Right, and that's located on the, what's known as the Aldwin Triangle.
Correct, yes.
The Aldwin Triangle, as I'm looking at, is it Exhibit A5?
Yes, the CU 3.04 sheet,
Okay.
which is Exhibit A5.
Now, the Aldwin Triangle, first of all, let's, for the record, make some notes about that. The triangle to its west is bordered by Aldwin Lane.
Correct. And the
to its
SEPTA
east?
rail station as well.
Right, and to its east, Ithan Avenue, and it's roughly triangular in shape.
Yeah, it collapses as the railroad curves, so it forms generally a triangle.
Correct. And as I understand it now, there is an existing path that's depicted on Exhibit A5 that parallels Aldwin Lane.
Yeah, it's generally used by the students from South Campus that come across the Aldwin Triangle to the existing SEPTA overpass and up into campus, as we discussed.
And then the area that you intend to preserve, am I correct to state that towards the north portion of that triangular area, that's forested and wooded now?
Yeah, and the Exhibit CU 3.4 shows a tree survey with all the individual tree locations on it as required by the Radnor Code.
All right. And there are, I guess, sporadic trees in the area on the west there that borders Aldwin Lane that's hatched.
Yeah, there's more trees on the eastern portion than the western portion.
Right. I'm told just this evening that essentially that western portion there, that area that is not preserved under this plan, is open.
Correct. Yeah, the trail heads through there, but it's generally under the canopy of the trees and undeveloped.
To your knowledge, does Villanova have any plans for the development of that piece of the Aldwin Triangle?
They do not. The only thing that would be preserved there is if any improvements needed to be done to the SEPTA station. There's currently only stairs there, so should anything need to be done to improve access to the southern portion of the SEPTA station, the intention was to leave that area. We focused more the development to the more the preservation to the eastern half, since that's where all the trees are and the existing building envelope is in that area. So to prevent development of the triangle, we focused the preserved land on top of the building, the available building envelope, and left the western portion out of the preserved area in case of any necessary SEPTA improvements.
Tell me what you mean by that. What would be necessary SEPTA increases, and who would make that determination?
If you needed a ramp to get over the bridge for handicap access, if there was ever any improvements by SEPTA. It's only a staircase, so if you're in a wheelchair,
Can you show me on the map where that is?
There's currently just a staircase there, so there's no, other than climbing the stairs, there's no way for ADA accessibility to get up onto that station. We don't know what's envisioned there. There's no specific plans or anything. We just don't know that if SEPTA comes in at one point and needs to do any work there, that area might need to be reworked.
Show me logically then where that ramp might go if that were necessary.
It would probably follow the existing trail, but you would raise the trail, do some kind of elevated walkway to get up onto the station. So we think it would be generally in line with that trail.
What is the line, that line there? Is that a property line? No.
Now that's a zoning divide, so there's...
This line, the line he's indicating now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is the property line. So that is basically what happened was Villanova previously, the deed for this area is all one area. The deed includes Main Lot, Pike Lot, South Campus, and Aldwin Triangle. And then when SEPTA came in and took property all through Radnor for, the Norristown High Speed Line, P&W, Route 100, whatever name you know it by, they came in and basically divided up this parcel by right-of-way takings. So that line is the remaining portion that wasn't taken by SEPTA. So there's a 90-foot wide corridor that follows basically the curvature of the tracks, and then there was a separate parcel taken, which has that odd triangular shape that encloses the parking lot and the driveway that comes up from Aldwin Lane, and basically is the parking field for that station. So
What, in your opinion as an engineer, would require that ramp to extend into the Aldwin Triangle?
It may or may not. We don't know, but we focused the preservation in the area where the by right development could occur with the location of the building setback and parking setback. We thought that area was of more value to preserve by the fact that that's where all the setbacks allow potential development. That's where the stream corridor is. It creates, the one dimension at the top notes that it creates basically a 150-foot riparian buffer along that stream channel by preservation, above and beyond the 35 that's required under the code. And the majority of the trees are located in that portion. So we just feel
According to
that
zoning, can anything be built there?
without this preservation, yes.
No, this piece of ground, can something be built there with the preservation?
With the preservation, it goes over top of the building setback. So we don't believe there's
Nothing
any.
can be built in there.
Right,
Without variance?
right.
What's the size of the piece? What's the size of that that's not being preserved?
We believe I haven't done detailed calcs on it, but we think it's about another 2 acres.
So it's 2 acres.
So wait, a point of clarity, this shape that's not shaded, this trapezoidal shape,
Right.
that is about 2 acres, and did you state does that encroach in the existing setbacks of the CICD?
This is not in the CICD use, so I don't understand the question.
So I just want to, point of clarity, I just want to make sure. So this land could be developed?
If you could fit something inside the parking setback, I guess so. But we tried to take the bulk of the developable area and put it in the preservation easement.
Well, let me see if I can help. Is there any reason why Villanova wouldn't agree to preclude development on that parcel in addition to the preserved parcel with a restrictive covenant?
I'd have to defer to Villanova on that question.
Okay. Would you ask that question for me?
I mean, I don't-
With the issue of a ramp being able to be built there if needed.
I would defer to Villanova for that discussion.
All right, I'll move on. I believe Mr. Phillips just told me that you've complied with a couple of these provisions under zoning, but let me ask you about number 2, which deals with the setback along the railroad property line. What's the story on that?
That's a difference in the zoning district. There's an odd property line that cuts through the area, and there's the, that's the same thing. I'll wait till the plan's up for more reference. But what we basically call the T parcel is an independent zoning line that travels through that area. So there's actually a division of PI zoning to R3 zoning that's in that pocket. So the accessory structure setback that Fleming letter notes is shown as a 10-foot accessory structure setback because that's the standard within the R3 district. So we believe that it is properly shown on the plan.
Okay. And you've provided, you've provided information to Mr. Phillips in response to his item number 3 under zoning.
And it was the...
those are displayed in the exhibits this evening.
Yeah, that was the campus-wide zoning table that we provided as the exhibit.
Let's talk about the buffer planning strips.
Yeah, well, I'll have to defer to the architect's going to testify about the buffer.
All right, so we'll have someone else who can do that. Very good, we'll defer that. The mechanical loading pit area, you going to be the man on that?
Yes, I can speak to that.
Right now, it doesn't meet current requirements, correct? The way it's aligned, or the way it's set up in the plans, the way it's displayed in the plans?
I don't know if I agree with that statement, but we agreed to review turning templates with the township engineer to review whether or not we feel it does comply.
Okay, so that's something that will be a subject of discussion and subsequent plan preparation prior to land development.
Yeah, but what we would like to speak to is, I guess it's Exhibit A6, which is the revised site plan. I know we spoke to the changes that were proposed for the West Lancaster parking. We didn't necessarily go over the main parking lot, and the one change here that speaks to that is we've added another loading dock outside of that service yard to the plans. And actually, in that case, the CICD only requires one loading zone, and we added a secondary one where the cursor was just highlighted, which is in the southern portion of Building 1C, which also has access directly from that drive aisle, and we believe that one complies to meet the standards.
Where's that located?
It's in
Speak to
the,
the mic.
I'm sorry, I asked where that was located.
it's in the southern tip of the 1C building, all the way, basically directly adjacent to the main pedestrian walkway in between the Building Complex 1 and Building Complex 2.
Do these hand mics, I like to look at the witness when I'm questioning. I like to see what he's saying. Do these hand mics work? Yeah. Right. So the engineer points out to me that the CIDC ordinance requires the approval in this process of the loading space and loading dock area. So those plans are going to be revised such that they can be evaluated by township professionals and staff and submitted to the commissioners during this proceeding?
Correct.
Very good. Okay. I'm going to go back to buffering, if I may. Can you generally describe to the commissioners where the buffering is to be installed such that it will soften the impact upon the nearby residents?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to how the layout set aside space for the buffering and then defer to the architect for generally the style of the buffer, et cetera. But the main concern for buffering from what we've heard from the neighbors is buffering the development from Aldwin Lane, looking across the railroad track towards the CICD development. So what we did early on in the CICD ordinance drafting process, the rear-loaded drive aisle behind the dorms had parking all the way from the church all the way to Ethan Avenue. As part of a result of the final ordinance and some review of the buffering, what we did was we eliminated the southern part, well, actually both sides of parking on the area directly adjacent basically to buildings 1A and 1B, which is the western side of the CICD ordinance, and the area most directly adjacent to the Aldwin Lane neighbors. That provides us an opportunity to install the requested 20-foot buffer area, 20-foot wide buffer strip in that area, and eliminated the parking and created more green space to be able to supplement with more substantial buffer in that area. Similarly, and we already spoke about the improvements and the design change to West Lancaster, where we basically followed that same concept, redesigned the parking concept on that side to create a wider green space along the railway to provide a wider buffer.
All right. So that buffering, I'll strike that. Your planner or landscape person can answer that. All right. There is some existing, strike that. Is your traffic engineer? Is your traffic engineer going to testify?
Yes.
Your testimony is, and I'm just confirming for the record, that the structures will meet all of the setback regulations of the CICD ordinance
Yes, it is, and we provided the chart.
from the various types of streets, arterial, major collector, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, there's no major collector in this area, but it'll meet the arterial, minor collector, and railroad, which are the three adjoining classifications that apply for this project.
All right. Your elevators and stair towers are located consistent with the ordinance requirements, is that correct?
Yeah, and we can show specifically on CU 3.03. Specific to that area, one of the setbacks that applies that's most applicable to the elevator and stair tower is the frontage on Ethan Avenue, which is a minor collector, so that requires the parking garage to have a 20-foot setback, but there's a provision that allows elevator and stair tower projections to be as close as 10 feet for no greater than a 50-foot width there. So as shown on CU 3.03, the garage face will be set at 20 feet, and then there's an elevator stair tower at the north corner and the south corner. They will both be 10 feet wide, so reducing that 20-foot setback to the 10-foot projection. And one of them is 35 feet long, and one of them is 22 feet long, both within the 50-foot allowable projection.
All right, and you testified as to the compliance with the height requirements. You didn't mention whether there were any spires or anything like that might exceed the height requirements in there?
Yeah, I would defer to the architect, but I believe those are excluded from the height calculation.
All right. Can you just for a minute, and if you could bring up the dormitories, sir?
The A6?
Yeah. Distance, the length of the building at 180 feet and the notches that you referred to?
Correct.
Is that capable of being enlarged at all? Can you show us what you mean by that?
Yeah, the CU 3.02 and 3.03 are probably better to see the notches. I don't know if they're highlighted as well on that graphical rendering. But basically, you'll see starting at the, on CU 3.02, starting at the western edge, you can basically see that it's an articulated building that basically projects in a line, turns 90 degrees, projects, turns in a line, 90 degrees, and continues to articulate. Each one of those legs was designed to be, none of the straight lines of that leg were designed to be over 180 feet. And then on the 1B, there's the two large notches in the rear. The central portion between those is no greater than 180. And then going to building 1C, once again, it's kind of a U shape with three legs that are no greater than 180. The code allows up to 3 buildings being connected before you need a 45-foot separation. So we have building 1A, 1B, and 1C. So 3 buildings connected. We show the firewall demarcations as to where those buildings are interconnected, and they'll operate as independent dorms with grade breaks to step down the hill. Since the topography falls from west to east, the finished floors of those buildings will be separated and they'll be connected by stair towers. So they'll operate as independent dorms with independent entrances, et cetera. And then at building 1C to building 2A, there's required to be a 45-foot separation. We're currently showing a 52 to 53-foot corridor in between those buildings. And then once again, we start with the eastern building, which is a little bit more of a C shape, we'll say. And once again, each one of those articulations is no greater than 180 feet in length, wrapping around all those articulated facades. And then anywhere where we get to the 180 foot, we have the minimum 6 foot by 24 foot long vertical break with the notch or the articulation.
All right. You mentioned light and your compliance with the light standard requirements, light standards rather. Noise. It is my understanding that when the South Campus was developed, the university agreed to seal all of the windows so that they could not be opened, lessening the impact of noise upon neighbors. Is that something that you believe Villanova would be willing to do in this instance also?
I would have to defer to Villanova or the architect for discussions about anything related to the operation of the building system.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Rice.
The president board. Fish Long, any questions for this witness? Okay. I think Gayla McCluskey has left the building. She's not here, correct? Rick Leonardi, questions for this witness, please? Is the portable mic on now? Okay. Mr. Leonardi, if you want to take that. There we go.
Good evening, Mr. Tweedy. Just a couple of quick questions. If we could have the slide showing the Valley Run. Probably 3.02 is probably good, if you could just drop down. Yeah, that's good. So Valley Run you describe as spring, and that the point source with a 50-foot radius around it coming out of the embankment there below the P&W. You describe that as a spring and the headwaters of the stream. In fact, have you looked at it?
We've had a wetland scientist review it.
Yeah.
And I was also out there with
Well,
him.
it actually comes out of a wooden frame, and the water comes to daylight out of a pipe that is let into the embankment. A little bit later, when you were discussing stormwater takeaway and conveyance, you mentioned that, in fact, quoting here, that the source of Valley Run might very well be underneath the railroad tracks. Which is it, do you suppose? Do you think that the spring is actually, that is in fact the first point source of the water there where it's indicated on the map, or do you think the source is actually underneath the railroad tracks? Perhaps a few feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet further north?
I wasn't involved in the construction of the railroad tracks or that pipe, so I wouldn't know. What
So, in
our
fact-
wetland scientist told us was that it generates out of that spring box and flows south through the
So in
Alden
fact,
Triangle.
there's really no way of knowing where Valley Run, where the point source is, where it rises. It might-
No, but it's somewhere, we reviewed it, and it's not on the north side of the railroad tracks. So it's either underneath the railroad or somewhere near that spring box.
Might very well be underneath main lot, though.
Well, all groundwater is connected, so where does a spring establish is
Very well.
a very vague question.
The next question I have is, you mentioned a new loading dock just now. This is new information for us. Does this new loading dock imply fewer dorm rooms, fewer students housed?
With the revisions that we've been working on, there's probably a slight reduction in bed count.
How slight?
The original conditional use plans was 1159. I think I'll defer to the architects, but I believe it's 1135 now.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Jonathan Heckscher, any questions? Anna Marie Esmond, questions, please.
Thank you. Have you evaluated the differential in elevation between the back of the Performing Arts Center and the garage proposed location, where it adjoins Pikefield, and the neighbors on the other side of Pikefield and Pikefield, the elevation differences?
The
This is relevant to both light and water.
The plan entitled CU 2.03 is the existing features plan for both Pike softball field and Pike lot. It doesn't extend all the way to the homes, but generally we're at 415, 413 in that general area, and the parking lot is up at about 430, 432, which is what we're targeting for an elevation of the Performing Arts Center and garage.
I'm not sure those numbers are correct with the ground level in the neighborhood and the ground level of the parking lot, but if, on a future hearing, it'd be nice to have those incorporated into the discussion. What kind of buffering is planned for light at that adjacent, both for the trucks that come around and load behind the Performing Arts Center, for the Performing Arts
Once
Center?
again, we're not the landscape architect, so I'll have to defer to the architect for any questioning regarding landscape buffering specifics.
So, you talked a lot about buffering behind the other lots that were ground level, so there will be no ground level buffering, am I to understand that, between Pikefield and the back of those edifices?
There's an opportunity for some room in between the Performing Arts Center and garage and the softball field, and I know there's discussions on some features for that, but we're not doing that design, so I can't answer those questions.
Okay, and were you aware that historically there was a pond, so I don't know the exact location, I need to get a hold of that map, but I believe it was either in the Pikefield region or in the surface parking lots?
As far as you mean a stormwater facility?
Well, no, an actual pond before all the development.
Yeah, and there's a current existing stormwater facility that was built for the press box expansion in the lower right corner that's shown on that map as well.
Right, that's the one that I believe the gentleman here mentioned was not functioning and is behind our homes. But I was talking about a pond that is probably the source of the water that's on the other side of the train tracks. Are you aware of this?
No, I'm not aware of what you're speaking about.
So getting one of those historical maps would probably be very helpful before we start breaking ground and stuff like that.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Does the board have any questions for this witness?
I just have a few. You had just mentioned the stormwater facility that was installed on Pike Field. Is Villanova expecting to take credit, use that existing stormwater capacity to handle the stormwater of discharge from the parking garage area and/or the Performing Arts Center?
For a portion of it.
Portion of it.
Yeah,
Are
you can't
you-
double control stormwater to the levels we're talking
Have you,
about.
has anyone reviewed the agreement between the township and Villanova on that stormwater facility that was entered into about 7 years ago?
I've reviewed the original design narrative. I haven't seen a formal agreement, but we can review anything submitted.
Okay. I noticed in the plan, the bookstore location is very close to Ithan Avenue. There have been statements made tonight that as many as 70% of the classroom path, 70% of the students are heading west to classrooms on West Campus, yet the bookstore is located to the east of that path of travel. Would the applicant be amenable to relocating the bookstore, getting it away from the street level access of Lancaster Avenue, Ithan Avenue, and so on?
I know the university is reviewing all the retail uses and what use best fits into each space, but any specifics on that, I'd have to defer to the university.
Okay, I have questions about the lanes, turning lanes and whatnot. Is that best to wait for the traffic engineer? Would you like to opine on that?
Well, I could answer, it depends on the question, but I could answer most of them. probably.
Okay. Well, you have turning lanes on Lancaster Avenue heading eastbound into the new, this is to the far left of the drawing that you see.
Right at Church Walk?
Yeah, Church Walk. What is the distance of those turning lane, that turning lane, I should say?
If you want to get into specifics on lane lengths and tapers, I might defer. There's a good exhibit in the traffic report that's probably best to run
Okay.
through with the traffic consultant.
Okay, and I don't see any turning lane at Ithan Avenue.
There's an extension of the left turn lane, but there's not a right turn lane.
So there's, and are you expecting to prohibit right-hand turns at that location?
No, I believe the southbound lane would permit a dual straight and right turn, but once again, we can probably defer to the traffic consultant on that one.
Okay, and also I noticed the new parking area that's outside of the CICD will have a 22-foot wide travel lane. In absence of having the report that was requested by Roger Phillips as far as traffic patterns and flows, do you expect to have traffic travel through that travel lane to get to the parking garage?
It's an opportunity that's available with, I mean, I assume you're talking about event circulation or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah.
the one benefit of these two new entrance points and to take away stress on the Ithan intersection for right turns is to allow the traffic to come in either at the West Lancaster right turn only in or Church Walk to bring the cars in and let them queue along that drive aisle to head directly to the garage and get them off of 30 as early as possible and get them into university-controlled travelways to help with congestion along the main corridor during those event paths.
What the first turn entrance? I cannot read the name of that entrance, but it's prior to Church.
It's probably
The new entrance
Yeah, I
drive.
mean, that's the West
Yeah.
Lancaster parking entrance.
And is there a turning lane designated for that? I can't tell from the drawing if there's a
There's
turning
a
lane.
right turn lane in and a right turn lane out, but there's
Right
a
in, right
dedicated
out.
lane for it, and then a turn lane in, and then an acceleration taper coming out. for
And the
right turn.
distances there are best to be discussed from the
Correct,
traffic?
yes.
Okay. Okay. On the Aldwin Lane preservation, There was a polygonal area, about 2 acres of land.
Right.
That is,
The remaining lands. that's not
yes.
preserved.
Your responses to Mr. Bola, to me, seem somewhat vague. Maybe you just don't know the facts. Maybe you don't know the details at this point. Has Villanova or has SEPTA asked Villanova University to set aside any space or land at that location?
No, they haven't. We just know that when SEPTA upgrades a station, they like to get ADA access to a station. We're building a ramp on the north side, so there's a question of, we're building a ramp on the north side and there's nothing on the south side.
And I'm not familiar with parking at the, is that a small parking lot at that station?
Yeah, SEPTA has 2 parking fields, one on the north side and one on the south
And
side.
is Villanova considering expanding that parking area?
That's not a Villanova parking lot, it's a SEPTA parking lot.
Well, that isn't, but in this polygonal area that's not being preserved, is Villanova considering making that any additional parking area?
I'm not aware of any plans for the Alden Triangle.
As far as parking goes, it appears that, based on testimony, there are 5,130 existing parking spaces. Please correct me if I give any numbers incorrectly.
No, correct. The existing parking availability on campus today is 5,130, correct.
Okay. You plan to provide 5,149 total?
Correct.
And this is for the entire campus?
Yeah, this is a campus-wide
Yeah,
calculation.
campus-wide.
Excluding the conference center.
Have you considered the different behavior of resident students and their parking behavior versus commuting students? And have any calculations or counts been done to calculate the amount of time that commuting students leave their cars on campus throughout the day?
Well, I might defer to the traffic consultant on that. I know he's done some traffic studies as far as movements. What I will say is what was found in West Campus when that was built, commuting student, 100% of commuting students have a car, 65 to 70% of residential students have a car on campus. So we believe there'll be a decrease in the number of cars on campus as a result of converting this from these students from commuters to on-site students.
Would we be able to assume, though, that a commuting student is not parking their car on campus 24 hours per day?
We would be able to assume that, yes.
Could we also assume that a commuting student's parking space may be shared by another student who's commuting at different times throughout the day?
Yeah, there is opportunity for shared usage, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions.
A couple very minor points. I notice on your drawings you use the terminology residence hall and dormitory. Is that just?
Nomenclature.
Okay. I mean, there's no difference?
There's no
between-
difference.
Okay.
Yeah, you can refer to it either way.
And a question probably for Nick more than you is the west parking area, which is CO, are those existing buildings there non-conforming?
I believe most of them are conforming, John.
But you have a dorm there.
Right, the one area does have a dorm, so I assume that probably is not conforming.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
My question's about pedestrian access along Route 30. So currently, there's pedestrian access from 320 to Ithan Avenue on the north side. Will that be changed by this plan in any way? Meaning a pedestrian can come from downtown Wayne and walk all the way down to the field house on sidewalk.
On the north side or on the
On the
south?
north side. So are we
We're not
interrupting?
affecting we talked about eliminating the sidewalk along the street on the south side. We don't propose any change to the sidewalk
Okay,
on
so
the
the
north side.
the current pedestrian access is intact on the north side.
Right.
And then what about the south side? Is the pedestrian access intact?
What we plan to do is replace the sidewalk on the south side that's directly adjacent to the curb and propose the new pedestrian what we'll call, more like a pedestrian plaza internal to the site to get through that frontage to improve safety along the roadway to get the pedestrians right off the curb line.
And then what about pedestrians to the left of Church Walk going west?
Along the frontage of West Lancaster, the current proposal is to leave the sidewalk as is,
So-
other than the modifications needed to add the right turn lanes.
So the pedestrian access between 320 and Ithan Avenue is not negatively affected in any way?
No, they would still have full connection along this frontage.
Very good, thank you.
The only point I had, John Fisher already asked it, and that was, in order to improve the pedestrian situation at Ithan Avenue, to reduce further the number of people that use Ithan to cross Lancaster Avenue, would the university consider moving the bookstore to the west portion of the CICD?
Like I said, I defer to the university. I know they're reviewing the best uses for each of the retail spaces. That's still an ongoing discussion internally.
But Mr. Tweedy, as an engineer, is that possible to move that
Well,
space to the west?
The question is the size requirements to support the residential uses. As you move further west, the spaces, there's 2 retail spaces to the west that are both around 5,000 square feet, and the easternmost size is closer to 10,000. So you have to meet the use with the size available. You have to find uses that can fit and be planned accordingly inside the square footage you have available. So
Well, the retail bookstore is about equal to the size of the other 2 retail locations, correct?
but there's one that's all-inclusive, and then there's 2 that are separated
they're
in separate
separate.
buildings.
So the buildings would have to be somehow modified in order to move it, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is more of an architectural question with space planning, so I would defer to either the university or the architect.
And my suggestion is that if we're going to explore that, that's broadened, because we don't know what you replace it with. Might be more problematic from the perspective that both of you have. So to me, the question shouldn't be, can it be moved? It should be, is it prudent to have it, is it prudent to move it? Not, can it be moved?
Mr. Rice, I've also been handed a question from Township staff that relates to this. I wonder if I could ask it at this point. Thank you so much. Mr. Tweedy, as you probably heard, there's some strong opinion from the police department that there should be an additional dedicated right-hand turn lane off of Lancaster Avenue onto Ithan Avenue, correct?
I've heard that comment, yes.
Right. If that lane were installed in that place, would that impact, strike that, how much of an impact, if any, does it have on the setbacks for the retail space currently proposed there?
The biggest concern we have, well, we have a lot of concerns with that right turn lane, and I know we're discussing with township staff. The one impact of that additional right turn lane is it further increases the length of that crossing, which makes it even longer for pedestrians to cross, which requires even more time of a pedestrian cycle and the traffic signal for pedestrians to get across there.
Understood.
So the one issue with that, we've already spoke a little bit, and there is an opportunity to put an island, what's called a porch-up island in there for pedestrians to rest on so that their crossing can be interrupted to maintain the crossing lengths. The concern with that is with the volume of traffic, how big does that island need to be? And at some point, does it get so large that it pushes the right turn lane so far south into the campus that there's a large impact on the setback? So depending on the geometric design of that intersection, it could have a very large impact on that front setback.
Please ask your traffic engineer to give that a good hard look before the next meeting.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, just a couple clarifications, Mr. Tweedy. The beds that are proposed now are 1,159, correct?
On the conditional use plan is 1159. The A6, the latest, has a reduction in bed count, but I'd have to defer to the architects as to what the current count is.
Okay, and you described them during your direct as apartment style
It's similar to West Campus.
and a few singles. What are the few, what does that mean, few singles?
Once again, I defer to the architects, but I believe there's, here's a good count. Yeah. Single beds are independent units with, I believe it's
One person in them?
one person, and then the bathroom is a common hall bath that's shared by a few of the single units, whereas the apartments are, say, 2 or 4 bedrooms, all enclosed with an independent bathroom inside that
Right.
unit with a kitchenette.
Okay, multi students, or more than one student will be in the apartments.
Yeah, I believe all the apartments are 4 beds. It's a question of whether it's 4 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms inside that unit.
The other question is the off-site, what you call the West Lancaster area with the existing lots. You stated they're going to be consolidated. Those
said we're-
8 lots are all going to be consolidated. Some of the driveways are going to be eliminated, and then you'll
Right,
have the
yeah.
rear parking in there. Let me finish my question.
Okay.
When you say they're going to be consolidated, consolidated legal description, that's going to become one large lot?
Yeah, reverse subdivision during the,
So they're separate, I mean, there's
I
separate
think
lot
it's
lines
8,
through
it's
there now?
8 separate parcels now, and
Okay.
we would create one single parcel and eliminate all the intermediate lot lines with a reverse subdivision.
Okay, okay, all right, that's all I had. Board have any other questions?
Just one comment you made, maybe you made it in passing, Mr. Tweedy. You said that all 100% of commuting students have a car?
That might be an overstatement, but there's a reduction in the car ownership when you convert a commuting student to a resident student.
I guess, but not 100%.
Right, some could take the train, et cetera.
Mr. Cornelia, do you have any
Just real quickly.
questions? Okay.
2 questions, probably. Alex, there's been a lot of discussion about stormwater management. Does the CICD itself require development of a detailed stormwater management system at this stage of the process?
Now, it's not specific to the CICD ordinance. There's an independent stormwater code for Radnor Township that's reviewed during land development when detailed design drawings are submitted.
That's all.
Okay, no other questions? At this point, I suggest we go off the record and talk about future schedules, future dates. There's been some dates that the board has discussed during the break and prior to tonight, and I'll throw some of those dates out just to make sure the board's available. We also may have a situation where 1 or 2 commissioners, 1 commissioner may not be available on a particular night, and we can deal with that once we agree on some dates, how to deal with that. Of course, anyone that's not here always has the pleasure of looking at this on video, and certainly looking at the exhibits that are submitted. But let me just start with some dates up here and see if the commissioners are on board with these dates. I have 2 dates in August, the 21st and the 25th. So the 21st, board has a regular meeting on the 18th. That would be the Thursday after the regular board meeting, August 21st. Does that work for the board members?
Yes.
Seeing the
8:21 works for me, 8:25 is a conflict.
Okay, well, let's just start with 8:21. How about the attorneys?
8:21 works.
That works for you? That's a shocker.
Fine with me.
Fine, okay. Anyone have any objections to the 8:21 as the next night?
Mr. Rice, we're just going to check and confirm, John, over here, talk. Just to confirm that the room's available.
Other boards and commissions?
Yes, we're just going to confirm that now.
Yeah, there's no zoning hearing that night, I know. In August, they do not have zoning
Gee,
hearings.
Nick, you're working for us.
Okay, so
I'd prefer the 25th.
well, we may do them both.
I'm not available the 20th.
Prefer one or the other.
You're not on the 21st?
25th's a conflict for me, too, Mr. Rice, so.
For what?
The 25th.
Okay, well, let's stay with the 21st.
21st is great.
Commissioner Higgins is unavailable on the 21st. He's on vacation. Do any of the parties have an objection with Commissioner Higgins viewing the videotape and looking at the exhibits in lieu of actually sitting here in person? Any objections to, we're going to have more testimony after August 21st. In order to get through this process, we're going to have people that'll probably miss a couple of these. So I don't see an objection, so August 21st looks like the next date, that's good. Okay. And I think I'm available. But I'll be here. Someone will be here. August 25th. Up here, I know Commissioner Curley's unavailable, and Commissioner Higgins, you're still away.
Okay.
You're okay on the 25th. Any of the other commissioners have a conflict on the 25th? Everybody else is okay?
Mr. Phillips is not available on the 25th, and I'm conflicted on the 25th.
Okay. Mr. Cornelia? Okay. Mr. Bola, I'll give you a second chance. Are you available or not? Now, you're conflicted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The 25th won't work. The next date is September 4th.
Well, excuse me, how about, is it the whole week of the 25th? I mean, we could do it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday if they're available.
How about the 26th?
I'm out every night that week.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
have a
I'm sorry to
conflict.
say, I'm out every night that week.
And
Every
one-
weeknight, Monday through, now I could get somebody to cover Wednesday, the 27th for me.
Okay.
All right, how about
I will be
Wednesday,
out of town.
27th?
Which of the commissioners are, Commissioner Fisher is unavailable on the 27th. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm unavailable.
Commissioner Curley, okay. So that's not going to work.
And again, I have
shade
something
tree
on
commission.
28th, but it's not big, so I could have somebody cover that. That's a Thursday.
August 28th? Commissioner Fisher? Commissioner Curley? You got two commissioners down. That won't work. Okay, we're into September.
Well, why don't we go back to, like Wednesday, the 20th, do 2 meetings that week?
Or even a Saturday. I don't know if that's outrageous or.
That's outrageous. But if, you know, we have 2 more meetings in August, then we can make it. If we can make it the 21st, then can we make it Wednesday, the 20th?
The 20th and the 21st?
Yes.
And then the 18th is a regular meeting that week?
Well, this is different.
Commissioners?
I'd prefer not to miss.
No.
I can't do the 20th, so that would knock me out 2 nights. I prefer not to have that situation.
So my sense is we're going to do the 21st and then move into September because we seem to have too many conflicts.
Okay. September 4th. It's a Wednesday after Labor Day. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, September 4th, Thursday.
Everybody's okay?
That's a little tough for me.
Mr. Bola, okay. Cornelia, Commissioner Fisher, okay. You want to watch the videotape and read the transcripts? Does anybody have any objection to Commissioner Fisher participating in that fashion? What's your objection?
He lives in where this is being affected. I think it's really critical that he's attend.
Actually, I have the same objection. I, of course, share that objection, too. I think I need to be here.
Well, can you make it, John? You said you can make it?
I don't think so.
Well,
I'm I'm out of
well,
town.
how about Friday the 5th?
I'm here.
I'll be out of town.
How about Wednesday, the 3rd?
I cannot
I'm
do
out,
Wednesday, the 3rd.
you know, I'll ask for extra police patrols in my home now because I'll tell you the dates I'm out. The 27th through the 4th.
Okay. So,
No, Booker's out.
Friday, the 5th?
Does anybody object to Rich Booker being here?
I can't be here Friday, the 5th.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Not on a Friday night.
All right, let's go to the next week then. We have a commissioner meeting on the 8th. What day's available?
How about the 9th, the Tuesday? So far, so good?
No, I can't do the 9th.
How about the 10th?
10th, I could get somebody to cover my other board.
September 10th. Any,
September 11th, I could make.
Well, let's stick with the 10th. Oh, you want the 11th?
all
You
right,
want
September
Thursday?
10th. Is the room open on September 10th? All right. September 10th. Once, twice.
I believe we have a conflict on that night. There is a presentation being made in this room that night on the 10th. I believe Parks Board has the 10th.
They could move.
Is there a motion by the commissioners to move the Parks Board?
Yeah.
Yeah, my sense is that, that
With-
we would move the park board.
Yeah,
meeting.
with this much struggle that we're having, I
We
would
need a
ask
motion for
that
that?
we have the Parks and Recreation Board not meet that night and we meet
Or they,
instead.
they can meet elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of rooms.
Well, they're having the presentations about the cell tower, so we want that televised.
Okay.
But I thought they pushed it back a week.
Okay, well, the 10th will work. We'll make that work.
Okay. Okay, we have two dates. We have August 21st and September 10th. Okay? All right, so,
We have one
and
more date, September 15th.
What day of the week is that?
Monday.
that's the third Monday in September. Anybody have conflicts? Mr. Ball,
Sorry.
How about the 16th or the 17th? What's open, Jennifer, that week?
17, I'm open. 18, I'm open.
All right, how about 17, John?
September 17th?
That's a Thursday?
Wednesday.
Thursday? You wanna
That's
do
a
Thursday?
Wednesday.
You wanna do
That's the
Thursday?
third Wednesday of the month.
All right,
And I should be okay for that.
all right.
Okay, so that's we have three dates now. We have August 21st,
17th, yes.
September 10th, and September 17th.
We'll be done by then. I'll do it.
And I assume we should be done on the 17th. Okay? All right, so there's, this will be posted on the township's website. There's not going to be any further advertisement of this. And the board should make a motion to continue this hearing tonight.
John, I have an economist here, and I think his testimony would be relatively brief. I basically have 3 or 4 questions to ask him. Is it possible to go forward with him
Tonight?
I was going to take him out of order, actually. He was going to be near the end of the presentation, but if we could possibly take him out of order tonight.
I have no objection.
It's up to the board.
No objections.
I don't believe it's going to be long at all,
Okay.
depending on cross.
Mr. President, if I may, what is the person going to present? Because if you're going to talk about the economic impact of this development,
Yes.
I'd ask the board to object and actually allow the township time to prepare and have actually folks here to be able to hear that. Because I don't believe that would be appropriate this evening.
Yeah,
Well, you can listen to the video and bring
Yeah,
up
we're gonna have-
comments, you know?
I disagree.
Yeah, I know.
it was part of the, basically, it's the same as in the developmental impact statement. It's the same testimony that was given in this statement.
What's the board's pleasure on this?
Let's-
Continue with this witness or not?
Continue.
Township manager is recommending we not do it.
I'm on, I mean, it's
pause.
already 9:35, so we're going to be over at least a half hour. We're looking at 10:05.
What's the rationale for having him do it tonight?
It's just because he's been sitting here for 3 or 4 hours, he's a busy person, and this is the time for him, we told him he
Well, how
could
much time
testify
does he need?
tonight.
10 minutes?
I could probably do it in 10 minutes. It's,
I can't guarantee that I can do it in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think we need 35 to 40 minutes.
I mean, I don't know what my cross would
My
be.
sense is that we
What-
should
what
wait,
cross
stick
could
with
you
our
do?
Yeah, I
original.
really think Bill White should be here.
Yeah, I didn't,
Okay. All right, so if it's that short, he can be the first witness up next month. Or on the 21st,
okay.
which is next month. Okay? So
Move to
just
continue.
move to
Second.
continue the hearing, right?
and it's at 6:30 each evening, correct?
6:30, August 21st.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
I'm just going to hold off on these two.
It's never just